where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood! Hollywood!
Send in the clowns, those daffy, laughy clowns. Send in those soulful and doleful schmaltz by the bowlful clowns. Send in the clowns.
They're already here.
I love you, Winfree.
Quiet.
We have reached a new low on this show, ladies and gentlemen.
Darn right we have. I have no regrets about any of that. All right. Hi, everybody. This is Damn You Hollywood. I'm Robert Winfree. That's Mark Radulich. Also joining us again is Alexis Hejna. And tonight we are tackling a movie that really should have been made in the mid-'70s.
It was called Taxi Driver.
See, I'm trying to be subtle. You know what? You are correct, sir. I should not. You are entirely correct. We are tackling the... Oh, what the hell was the director's name?
Todd Phillips.
Todd Phillips. It was Todd something or other. I knew that. All right. Todd Phillips directed, Joaquin Phoenix starring Joker. Okay, let's start with this. Mark, you picked this movie. How you doing?
Yes, I picked it, but I mean, it falls smack dab in the middle of what we do here. This is part of the DC Comics movies franchises. This is it's part of the big budget family, but this is not, in fact, a big budget film. This was actually only made on a budget of $54 to $64 million, and it's a smash fucking hit. We'll talk about that more when we actually get to the money, but DC was talking about how they needed to get away from the Justice League, Batman v Superman, Marvel method of jacked up budgets that make billions of dollars, because that wasn't working for them.
Because they haven't made $1 billion collectively.
So
that was not working for them.
I was gonna say, I know we'll talk about again when we get to the money, but I'm pretty sure Joker has already surpassed Justice League or Batman v Superman, or maybe even both.
It was absolutely like double Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, it crushed Dark Phoenix. So yeah, I mean, we're talking about it. If I was just into doing movies just for the sake of doing movies, I probably would have wanted to do this one anyway, because I was interested in the subject matter in terms of a movie about society crushing a man's spirit who was already dealing with mental illness and turning him into a monster. We've seen this sort of thing before. I already referenced Taxi Driver. The movie references Taxi Driver to a degree.
A lot.
But there's also Falling Down with Michael Douglas. There's other movies of that ilk where society breaks a dude and he goes crazy.
It's also on the record that this is referencing a lot of the King of Comedy.
Yes, it is.
A previous Robert De Niro film.
So with all that said, I mean, that's why it's on the slate of things to talk about. I have to say, I'm echoing other people's sentiments when I say this. Of all like the horror movies, and granted there haven't been a lot, but I did see It Chapter 2. I have seen a few horror movies this year. This is the scariest thing I've seen all year. Like legitimately horrifying.
You are kind of okay. I'm not. I could make a joke about you being a wuss. I'm not going to. You are uniquely positioned as an individual to be genuinely horrified by this movie.
Okay.
I mean, I remember watching because you had mentioned, and I don't want to get too deep into this because it's not really going to be a thing, but you had mentioned after you saw the movie that you were struggling a little bit to process things. Like, I don't know how to talk about parts of this because I don't want to break down and ugly cry on the podcast. And I understand. I've nearly done it a couple of times. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, I'd much rather talk about having cancer than having to talk about the things this evoked in me.
Yeah. And point being, I got to watch the movie kind of with that in mind, and I went, I wonder which parts of this really kind of got to Mark, because again, not just the movie as a whole, but like, you know, which scenes, which moments, like, okay. And I saw a couple like, oh, that's it. That's the moment when Mark, sitting in his theater 3 days ago, just couldn't take it anymore for a second or two.
So I'll tell you what my experience was, and I'll make this very short because I think people listening to this just kind of want to hear what we thought of the craft of the movie, and so I don't want to go overly into the socio-political ramifications of this movie or the editorializing therein. I think it's a part of it. I think it has to be addressed, but we're here. We're
get to talk about how terrible critics are.
Yeah, you know what? Yes. But here's what I'll tell you. Watching the movie, part of it, like the first like half of it, I was like, "There's no plot here. Stuff happens to a poor schlub," and then the movie sort of takes a turn, and it's more than just stuff happening. He's making choices or reacting to things and affecting his life, and so there's not a real strong, thick plot here. But there is something to kind of grab hold to that drives the action forward. And so when that shift happens, when it really hits second gear, is when I got really, like, I was literally physically sitting on the edge of my seat, mouth agape, like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, I know I'm the big action, you know, Hobbs and Shaw, Star Wars, ooh, stuff is blowing up guy. But I probably haven't reacted like with like, oh my god, like what's going to happen next with bated breath in a movie in a really long time, like I did to this one. The problem was after the movie, when I started thinking about the implications, the ramifications of it, when I started thinking about my own thoughts and beliefs and practices relative to the movie, is where I was overly empathizing with Arthur Fleck, the Joker. And, you know, if people have been listening to the show for a while, know that I am an empathetic person. Part of it's through training and part of it's just my natural state of being. And I think the sadness inherent in this character and the anger and the violence and the frustration was overwhelming, and it was well after the movie as I was sitting in my car, because I actually like didn't drive home right away. I kind of sat in my car and had a moment for myself and just kind of let it all wash over me. And I had my reaction to it. I kind of had my moment. I went home. I told my wife about it. My wife said, go hug your son. I did, and I felt better. So there it is.
All right, Alexis, always happy to have you back. What inspired you to decide you wanted to talk about this one for any reason in particular? Or did Mark just kind of put your name on the schedule and you went, yeah, all right?
No, because when Mark puts me on the schedule, usually I go, wait a minute, what? I'd like to remind the folks at home that he tried to get me to agree to review the Maleficent sequel, and I said, not a chance in hell.
I envy you your freedom.
Oh, I know you do, darling. No, I was very intrigued by this movie. Anyone who's been listening to the show long enough knows that I am a giant comic book nerd. I am a Comic-Con vendor, so I'm surrounded with comic books, probably more than is, medically wise. And looking at a film like this, it just perplexed me because it looked so different than anything we have seen with comic book films before. Now, I am, like many fans, a big fan of the Joker, but I have never liked when somebody tries to give the Joker an origin story. There's that classic line from The Killing Joke that I think is just the perfect summation of the Joker as a character. If I'm going to have a background, or if I'm going to have a past, I prefer it be multiple choice.
I love that line.
Me too. It's one of my favorites. And it is the perfect way to sum up the Joker as a whole. He is so crazy that not even he knows his backstory. And so many people are like, well, it was like this, it was like this. I'm like, no, it wasn't. And when I saw this and they're talking about it's the origin of the Joker, I was a little uneasy at first. Yes, thank you, Eddie. I'm sorry. I've got someone whooping lightly in the background. I think that's his preliminary. I will start whooping louder if you don't start throwing the tennis ball. But the more I looked into the movie, the more I started to think, perhaps if you remove any DC notes about this and just look at it as a film, as somebody who is losing the last shred of their grasp on reality, someone who has been kicked around, beaten up, and had society spit on them for so long, and we're just seeing them finally take that final step over the deep end. I thought, this could very well be a brilliant movie. So I was very torn on it, and I was very intrigued by where they were going to go with this. It is worth pointing out that Todd Phillips and DC as a whole has gone out of their way of saying that this Joker film will not impact the DCEU as a whole. We are not going to see Joaquin Phoenix going up against Robert Pattinson in the future, and frankly, I'm very grateful for that because that just sounds really bad.
Oh, come on. Watching Pattinson just fade into the background, both like in terms of skill and I imagine editing that movie, that like anytime Joaquin Phoenix's Joker would be on screen with Pattinson, they just like fade Pattinson to like black and white in the background because no one's actually watching him.
In fact, Todd Phillips has even admitted that there's a very good argument that Joaquin Phoenix's character is not the Joker, but rather inspired the Joker, the one that we actually do know in the comics, which is a possibility. We have seen in future writings with in the comics, for example, the Batman Beyond series that actually gave us the Joker's gang, that the character of the Joker did inspire future criminals. And I kind of like that idea, that argument that maybe this isn't the Joker that we all know. Maybe this Joker inspired future one.
I kind of got a... And again, there's some specifics that we'll get into when we get into the movie itself. I kind of got a weird little bit of a vibe at the very end of this movie that... Because at the very end, and I'll spoil a bit of not too much of the plot, I'm going to go over it again in a minute anyway. But when he's in Arkham and he's just laughing, and his therapist says, I was just thinking of a joke. I almost kind of wonder if he wasn't just thinking, that would make a good backstory. And the entire movie is just his delusion.
I actually had the same argument when I was discussing this with my aunt. She and I went to go see the same film, or see the film together. She wasn't a huge fan of it, but I said there is a very good... In fact, Mark and I were discussing this over the weekend about how we were going to approach this film, and I said, what I want to discuss is how much of this movie actually is happening, and how much of it's just happening in Joker's head.
And I think that's the kind of the fun of the movie is that there's a lot going on here. Like, it's not a perfect movie. There are definitely issues with the craft, but it's one of those movies that, and this is the frustration I have with the critics. There are definitely critics that went, okay, I'm going to see the Joker movie, this is a comic book movie, and never quite got out of that frame of mind. And then there's everybody else who kind of walked in and just let the movie be a movie, which can be interpreted different ways. People can approach it from different angles. It leaves itself... It's a very simple story, but it leaves itself open to wide interpretation. Is it an unreliable narrator story? Is it straightforward? Is this the real Joker? Is this a Joker that inspires other... there's a lot going on with this movie. And even before you get to the editorialization of modern culture, modern society. And at least a third of the critics aren't giving it that much credit. Like, they're just like, oh, it's another stupid comic book movie, which is really frustrating. But I think for those that are open to this and forget the fact that this is DC, that this is a comic book character, and just be open to who this character is and what the story is and how it unfolds, I think there's an opportunity for a really great experience while watching this. It's also really sad and really scary.
I'm not sure where you get scary, but I'll leave the look. What scares you is what scares you. We
Okay.
don't have to go into great detail.
I'm gonna put this out there. The scary part for me was let me say it this way. Power can be an illusion, and I'll talk very, 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 very briefly about my work experience. I work in a jail. The ratios are like 70-1. Okay, not for me. I'm in mental health, and I'm usually one-on-one with the patient, with plenty of security around me. But the deputies are by themselves in a pod with, and these are open bay situations, like just bunks on a floor, not cells. And again, they can have up to 70 people in this one thing. And there's an illusion of power and control by said deputy, with a lot of things taking place all at the same time to maintain that illusion and that structure of power. But if all of that goes away, and those 70 people, or even half of that, 35 people, come to the realization that it takes absolutely nothing for them to take control over that pod, they could really easily. There's a couple of scenes in this movie where you see cops who their stock and trade is that illusion of power, that illusion of control, and then it evaporates instantaneously in this mob of rage and frustration and anger and resentment. And it's acted out physically when those cops are overwhelmed. And it doesn't happen once. It happens a few times in this movie. That's the scary thing for me, is that how possibly, I'm going to qualify this by saying possibly, how possibly fragile and delicate the structure of our society really is. Okay, I'll shut up and let you butt in here.
That's okay. That's a very valid perspective to bring to this, and I don't want to comment on the nature of civilization, society, and how people relate to each other, but we might get to that in a minute. Anyway, as for the plot of this movie, we follow Arthur Fleck. This will become the Joker, played by Joaquin Phoenix. He is it's never expressly stated what's wrong with him when we meet him. We know he has a few things.
He has a degree of brain damage that we'll find out later was from having been physically abused, and he has like a neurological condition that and I forget what it's called, but
hysterical laughter.
It's in the Wikipedia. But yeah, it produces the hysterical laughter, which is again anxiety or emotionally induced.
May also be a touch of schizophrenia, since we're talking about the delusions and such, and we do see he suffers from those.
True.
So, author suffers from a neurological disorder that causes him to laugh at inappropriate times and depends on his social... Okay, moving on.
Yeah, and again, that's a real thing. In fact, it's one of the things that when Joaquin Phoenix was studying for the role, he looked at people who suffered from hysterical or pathological laughter.
Do you remember what it said on the card exactly? Because I think it was on there.
No, it just had a description.
Okay.
It just said, I have a condition. It causes me to erupt in laughter at inappropriate times. It does not reflect my actual feelings in the situation. Please kindly return this card.
Yep. Okay. Got it.
So anyway, we're following him. He's nominally a clown, like the kind that goes to parties or does events.
Yeah, I guess he works for like a rent-a-clown service, because we see there are other guys who work as clowns as well. And
Yeah.
They just get hired out. It's like, hey, I need a clown to stand outside my business for a couple of hours or something.
Yeah, and he's being one of the clowns that gets hired out there, and it's not going so well. The opening scene is he gets his sign stolen by a bunch of hooligans. When he chases them down, they break it over his head and then kick the crap out of him. For no other reason than because. We see that he lives with his mother, Penny, in public housing, basically. And he's on what did they say? 6 or 7 different medications. I can't remember if it was 6 or 7. One of those two.
I think it was 6.
He's got a social worker who is, the one who kind of keeps track of him. He was in Arkham apparently for a brief period of time. He does mention at one point, I felt better when I was locked up. And his mother is a big fan of Thomas Wayne, who she used to work for and has been writing letters to. And Arthur is, there's not a lot of money. He's feeling very, very marginalized. He's damaged anyway. And things start really going bad for him when one of his co-workers, after hearing that he got jumped outside of his place of business, at his job, we're clowns, we're a target, you got to protect yourself, and he gives him a gun with ammunition, like you do, I suppose. And Arthur starts carrying this with him when he goes to work, including one time when he goes to a children's hospital. It falls out of his... Oh, any scene of him with a gun was just the hardest thing in the world for me to watch because he does everything wrong.
It's so funny because in the movies everybody's so swished with a gun, but in real life, it can be, they're heavy. It can be awkward if you're not used to it. They burn when you shoot them, and
barrels get hot. Yeah.
And so
I always laugh at that when I see I'm going to shoot this handgun 4 times and shove the barrel down in my crotch. No, you're not. That's a mistake you only make once, buddy.
So
who else burst into laughing during that scene where he's pretending he's dancing with the gun and it accidentally goes off? And
he grabs that thing and cocks the hammer, and my head's almost in my hands going, buddy, you never even checked the cylinder to see if it was loaded. You just assumed because there was loose ammunition it wasn't. Always check that it's unloaded. Even if you know it's unloaded, you always treat a weapon as if it's loaded.
So it's funny that he's clearly never handled a gun before, and so it was a brilliant acting. It was a brilliant acting choice by Joaquin Phoenix, and it was a great piece of characterization to see him fumble a gun.
Yeah, he fumbles it. It falls out of his pants. Lands. He tries to play it off, but. One of the orderlies or the nurse is like, hey, your clown brought a gun to a children's hospital. He tries to go, no, it's a prop, it's part of my act. His boss, calls BS. And then says, and even if it is a prop, what are you doing with a prop gun at a children's hospital?
We also see that his boss doesn't trust him because I guess in the opening scene when that sign got broken, the shop owner accused him of stealing it. I guess he didn't believe Arthur when he said he got jumped, and the boss doesn't believe him either. He says, if you don't return that sign, I'll have to take it out. He goes, I got jumped, some kids took it. He goes, well, what kid would steal a sign?
Can I just say that there's a bizarre bit of interaction there that just reiterates what a jackass his boss is, at least from the perspective of Fleck. He says, I got, some kids took my sign and I got jumped. What do you want me to do? It's like, what kind of kids would take a sign? Look, just return it and everything will be fine. What makes you think I have the sign? And then his boss's response is, it's crazy out there. I don't know. Buddy, were those two thoughts not connected at all in your head?
Surely not.
Besides, I'm sorry, if you actually have gone out in the open world, you know that there are dumbass kids who will steal anything just to get a rise out of somebody. It's not actually stealing for the value. It's stealing because this is funny. We're going to torment this person.
Well, let's be.
It's all the friggin' time.
Well, let's be clear about something. They took it. They took it to provoke him. Then they smashed it over his head. It's not like they took it and were like we have your sign and you're never getting this back again. If he hadn't chased them, I would have gone to a garbage bin somewhere.
Yeah, again, there's very distinctly, I think, in this movie, and I apologize for getting off track, they showed 2 different kinds of, societal breakdown. And, again, this is all background stuff to the character, but one is the kids, the ones who attack him, and a few other places, that just are taking advantage of kind of the generalized chaos. They also show the actively disenfranchised. And there's 2 very different kinds of violence and issues that arise from that. And the fact that, again, a large part of what starts the whole thing is just the randomness of teenagers being, shitheads as they are. Sorry, any teenagers listening. You are, in 10 years, you'll look back and go, man, I was a shithead. We all do.
10 years, the minute they turn 19, they realize, wow, we were shitheads.
Some of them, yeah. Anyway, Arthur, after being fired, is on the subway, so he's in a bad way, and there's three, like, stockbrokers, financiers, I don't know. They work for Wayne Enterprises, but this is every douchebag frat boy who got a job based on familial association rather than aptitude, and just
these are guys at the boardroom table in the scene in Boiler Room, where Ben Affleck is giving the speech about do you want to become a millionaire? These are the guys at that table.
Yeah. Anyway, they start attacking him, and it escalates because at least two of them are drunk, like just so drunk.
Plus, Arthur starts laughing again, and they're getting a little annoyed because Arthur tries to reach in and get his card to explain what's going on. These guys are not going to give him the opportunity.
Yeah, what sets it up is that one of the drunk guys is throwing French fries at a patron on the train, a female woman listen to me, a woman on the train. They just kind of drunkenly teasing her and throwing French fries at her, and he starts laughing at it.
Yeah, and while he's being attacked, he grabs his gun, he shoots two of them, and chases the third, and shoots him on the... Oh. And, in all honesty, this is an odd bit of the character, but I think if he had stopped after shooting the two that were physically attacking him, some of what happens next does not happen, but the fact that he chases down and executes this other one as just a bit of a window into the character. Anyway, he kills these guys. There's news that breaks about it because he's in his clown makeup when he does this, and that's all that some of the people have seen. I mean, there's no one else on the car, but there's a few other people around when he... again, there are people. And so, okay, the clown did it. And Thomas Wayne actively condemns the murders.
This movie does take place in the 1970s. This is before we had, real security cameras or anything.
Yeah, that's also the only possible explanation I have watching this movie as to why he was able to get a gun onto the set of, The Tonight Show.
Actually,
well, it does make sense.
I mean, it has the late 70s aesthetic, and this is close enough to where it really doesn't matter. I'm being kind of picayune about it, but the movie takes place in 1981.
Fair enough. Late 70s, very, very early 80s kind of things. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, he feels... he starts feeling a little bit better about himself, and Thomas Wayne, denounces the people who are just irrationally angry at the successful because they're not. Arthur finds out that the social...
Hang on.
social worker...
This is important because a lot of reviewers miss this too. Thomas Wayne specifically refers to the disenfranchised as clowns.
Yeah. I believe the exact line is, for all the people who just react angrily at anyone who's made anything of themselves, to those of us that have, people who behave like that are always going to be clowns.
This film really did take an interesting approach with Thomas Wayne. We've always seen him in past versions. I think specifically of Batman Begins. He's kind. He is giving. He's very understanding. That is not the Thomas Wayne we get in this. This Thomas Wayne is a jerk. He is elitist, and he just doesn't seem to really care.
I got the feeling this is yet another stand-in for Trump.
In some ways, yes. There's two kind of things about this that make me take a slightly different perspective. One is just there's a fundamental shift in the character in this instance. Thomas Wayne, in most other iterations of the character, is expressly a doctor. He is Dr. Wayne. This one isn't. I don't know what he does. He's a billionaire. He's always a billionaire because Bruce becomes a billionaire by inheriting, not doing. But it's enough of a fundamental shift in how do we approach the character that just as a slightly different tack. The other thing is, our only exposure to this character is through the prism of Arthur Fleck, and I trust nothing that he shows us. So again, is this the Saint Wayne that Bruce tends to remember his father as? Absolutely not. And frankly, I do prefer that. I would like to see this version of Thomas Wayne actually fleshed out more, but that's not what this story is designed to do. Anyway, he's announced that he's going to be running for mayor of Gotham. Anyway, Arthur goes to his social worker, and she announces the city's cutting our funding. I'm sure Mark had horrible flashbacks. This whole office is being shuttered. And Arthur like, well, then what about my medication? And she just breaks. Like, you get one of those moments when anyone who does something like this, not just something like this, but something that requires you to put on a different face. I had a teacher once who mentioned the time that he accidentally stumbled into the preparatory embalming room at a funeral home, and the people running it were back there having lunch, and it was just a little bit shocking. Like, oh, you're humans, and the guys immediately they saw him and nope, you can't be back here. Get out. Put on his funeral director face. Came back out and how can I help you? And it's odd when you see them drop it, especially in the professional setting. His social worker then just drops the face and goes, Arthur, no one cares about you, or me, or anyone in our loose situation. There's some real weirdness in that Arthur, technically illegally, reads a letter his mother wrote to Thomas Wayne wherein she claims that Arthur is his son. She puts forth this prospect to Arthur. He goes to the Wayne Manor. Alfred, he briefly meets very young Bruce Wayne. Alfred shows up and tells him, oh, your mother used to work here. That's it. Like, there's nothing else to it. There's nothing else to tell, and Arthur's not happy about this. But the fact that he's out actually has him evading police questioning, because as you do if you were told, hey, a clown publicly murdered people, now the detectives went around to the professional clown organizations, and his name got brought up, so they're just doing their due diligence. They don't get to meet him. They instead talk with his mother, and somehow I imagine this is just bad luck with their timing, because she has a stroke while they're there. Those poor cops.
I think in the activity of questioning, lightly or heavy as it may have been at the time, she kind of reacts psychodynamically and has a stroke.
Yeah. Which again,
heard of.
No, not at all. And that just has to be one of the worst things. If you're okay, so ma'am, can you tell us about your son? Do you know of his whereabouts? And then suddenly she's hyper, like, oh god, that's got to be just a terrible situation. Anyway, he first meets these two police officers briefly at the hospital. Denies being involved with the murders. Kind of, tells them to piss off.
You do feel a little sorry for the police officers, because Arthur is pretty mad. He's like, what were you talking to her about? What were you doing? And you do kind of get the idea. It's like, these guys were just doing their job. They were literally wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, buddy, you're a clown. We're running down all the clowns. Like, that's it. And
again, you get the impression that his former boss probably shoved his name to the top of the list.
Almost certainly. And so anyway, Arthur at this point with his mother in the hospital trying to recover from a stroke, winds up going to and confronting Thomas, who says, I'm not your father. You were adopted. We had to commit your mother. Your mother was in Arkham Asylum for a bit. Sorry, man, I don't have anything for you.
We've forgotten to discuss the nightclub.
Oh yeah, the comedy club.
Because that starts to come back.
So real quick, then, if you're going to do that, There's also an interaction where Arthur meets Zazie Beetz in the elevator, and
no one cares.
here, well, it's relative and it's important. He meets Zazie Beetz in an elevator. Zazie Beetz, as you do as a parent, kind of acknowledges her kids being annoying or whatever the case may be, and she kind of makes the motion with a hand of like a gun going off. And from the perspective, I want to be clear about this. From the perspective of the audience, okay?
The stupid members of the audience.
From the perspective of the audience that didn't see Fight Club, they begin a relationship.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, he invites her. He's an aspiring stand-up comedian because why not? I guess I don't know.
It was his dream. They established that when he's watching Robert De Niro's Tonight Show, and he envisions himself being on the show.
For the record, I gotta ask, that scene where he envisions on the show and Robert De Niro's character, has him stand up and applauds him for taking care of his mother and brings him down and introduces him to the audience. Who here hasn't had that almost exact same fantasy? We have all had that moment where we have wanted exactly that.
I don't think I've never had that one. I've had others, but not that one.
Well, I think what Alexis is saying is sort of a general being acknowledged for being, a good person or doing a good thing. I guess especially if you haven't felt like you've been acknowledged for said thing.
And not just being acknowledged, but being acknowledged by somebody that you consider to be the cream of the crop and maybe even a bit of your idol.
Yeah, you're speaking to validation. You're being validated by somebody whose opinion you favor.
And on a wide scale.
Yes.
Not having someone say this in the comfort of your home, that you are getting praised, and a lot of people know that you're getting praised by someone whose opinion matters.
Yeah, I imagine everyone has to one degree or another. That's true. Anyway, I was just going to note that, again, of course he's an aspiring stand-up comedian because stand-up comedians are all such well-adjusted people.
Wasn't that a line from Patton Oswalt?
Probably. Given how many of his friends have committed suicide.
Oh, Jesus
Ow.
Christ. Moving on.
Okay, rephrasing. It's not a profession that attracts the most stable of people.
I haven't changed my position. Moving on.
And okay, what was it? Anyway, he's an aspiring stand-up comedian. Gets onto an open mic night and it goes just horribly wrong. Initially, he can't control his pathological laughter. Then when he does, his material is terrible. He's just not funny. I mean, his mother, I laughed when he tells his mom, "Mom, I'm going to be I'm working on my act. I'm going to be a comedian. Everyone tells me, it's good material." And she just kind of looks at him and goes, "Don't you have to be funny to be a comedian?"
And then the scene just cuts. We don't even see his reaction.
Oh, I laughed. That was so funny to me.
I do kind of like how he says, all these people say my stuff's ready for the big clubs. We know he's not talking to anyone, but you kind of sit and wonder, does he actually think he's talking to people, or is he simply saying this to placate his mother? I mean, I hate to bring it up, but you hear Trump always say, "Oh, people always say that this, I've heard people say this is so great and everything." It's like, no, you haven't. So,
He might have.
In mental health, it's sometimes very hard to figure out where the delusions begin and end, and where the sometimes weird truth begins and ends. They blend together. It's funny. I was dealing with a guy today who I won't get into all of his stuff, but he was telling me something, and some of it sounded patently absurd and was clearly a sign of delusion. And some of it was like, that might be true. Unfortunately, it's coming from you, and you're not reliable. So, we're going to go with the former and not the latter here. But you do occasionally hear a story that sounds so crazy it's probably true.
Yeah,
You do also have a lot of cases where, admit it, we all, embellish our stories a little bit to our parents to make it sound a bit more important.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Not just our parents, anybody. You're telling it. You're out with your friends, at the TGI Fridays, and you're telling a story. And if you're any good at it, you're going to embellish.
Well, just think about how many times you've told somebody about something that happened at work. Maybe one or two people actually said that you did a good job. But the way you tell the story, a good chunk of the department said you did a good job.
Suddenly, yeah, you went from you did something appropriate and good and well within the boundaries of what you're supposed to do as a professional, and suddenly you're the lone fucking ranger and the hero of the day.
Yep.
The place's bricks would have come undone had you not been there to salvage the situation.
Well, look, that tornado that was coming down, yeah, I turned that away. Again, we've all done that. After Thomas mentions that his mother was committed, he goes to Arkham to see if he can find any sort of evidence to support or refute that claim. Winds up stealing his mother's file, which indicates that she was committed. She suffers from extreme narcissistic personality disorder, delusions.
That she's adopted.
He's adopted. That is confirmed by the paperwork. That his mother allowed her then boyfriend to abuse him. He was found chained to the radiator.
Sorry, if you mentioned this, I did not hear you say. You did mention that Penny does believe that Thomas Wayne is Arthur's father, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. That is her stance, and the degree to which she's aware of the delusion or not is unclear.
Okay, I apologize. I was sending out a couple of texts while you were talking earlier, and it just sort of hit me. I'm like, wait, did that actually get brought up?
So that's her stance, is that again Thomas Wayne is the father of this child, and there's now a bunch of evidence. And her response, there's this weird bit of hallucination where Arthur is imagining being present at her, intake kind of thing, or one of her sessions when she's in Arkham. When she just says, no, he paid for all that. He's the one who had it done. That's not true. And then the guy questioning her says, okay, putting that aside, the abuse he suffered and the living conditions were abhorrent. And her response is just, he always seemed like such a happy child. His sense of reality is crumbling. He goes to the apartment of unnamed single mother.
Zazie Beetz.
That's the name of the actress, not the character.
Zazie Beetz.
He then kind of realizes, oh, that was all in my head. Well, doesn't that just suck? He goes to sleep in a refrigerator.
Oh my god, what? That scene was so weird.
Look, man, if you
figures everything out, it just, yeah.
If you want to die, that's a nasty way to go, but it'll do it. For those unfamiliar, refrigerators are mostly airtight, especially the older models like that.
Look, we got to keep going here, and I want to get to the craft review, but for those who are unfamiliar, what I'm about to say may be like, well, it's sort of a weird way to go with this, but all I could think about was Gail Simone and women in refrigerators during that scene.
Fair enough.
All I could think was, and now, ladies and gentlemen, why that scene in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull makes no damn sense.
Didn't then, doesn't now, never will.
It's funny the things we think about when we watch movies.
Man, I thought of a scene from the novel It, where one of the disturbed children, who's actually completely cut from the all visual adaptations, both the miniseries and the movies.
No, you're thinking of Patrick Hofstadter. He was in in Chapter 1. He was the dude with the hairspray who got killed down in the sewers.
Huh, might have been. Because I remember Henry had his two running buddies, and then there's the third one who's like just a total sociopath in the sense that he finds this abandoned fridge out in the woods and like puts small animals in it, shuts it, and sees how long it takes them to die.
All right.
Like again, he's a character that I believe is mostly removed from other adaptations, or they certainly don't give him enough as much time because there's no reason to. He dies in the past. Anyway, Arthur gets a call from the Tonight Show, which is just all I'm calling it, with Murray something or other. It's Robert De Niro. It's Robert De Niro with a giant stamp on his forehead that says, "I cashed the check." And good for you, buddy.
No, this is Robert De Niro saying, "Hey, I was in King of Comedy. This is funny now."
Robert De Niro going...
Look, in his defense, we've seen recent Robert De Niro movies. He tried in this one.
Fair enough.
Agreed.
Well, look, De Niro's not done anything even remotely interesting. I've maintained this since the first Meet the Parents. And whatever your opinion of that movie, fine. If you liked it, fair play. I think we can all agree that's the mile marker after which there is nothing of that. Like, that is the entry point to the wasteland. But
did we discuss Arthur's video getting played?
Yeah, he bombs so hard when he does this that the comedy club, which will send tape on occasion to this show, yeah, you need to stand up to warm up the crowd or whatnot. Here's some guys I got. He just sends them tape. He bombs so badly that Murray feels compelled to put it on the air just like for posterity's sake. Like,
this was a viral video before viral videos were a thing.
Yeah. But there's apparently enough of a response to this that Murray kind of goes, all right, find this guy if you can. We'll bring him on for a bit. We need content. Content is king on this show. We'll bring him on for a bit. What could go wrong? We'll get to that in a second.
Side note, did you guys catch the name of the comedy club that he performed at?
Popos.
Pogos, with a G.
Really? I must have mistaken that.
Yes, this was an allusion to was it John Wayne Gacy?
John Wayne Gacy's clown character was called Pogo the Clown.
A lot of the makeup that Joaquin Phoenix puts on in this is inspired by that, too. Unrelated note, well, partially related note, a lot of clowns that I saw, because anytime they do a Gacy thing, they have a few professional clowns on to talk a little bit about it. One of them that I heard mentioned is, anytime you work with kids, your makeup should never have any straight lines or hard angles.
Yeah, no points.
And, the first time we see him, we see Joaquin Phoenix in this. Yep, he's putting the diamonds in the eyes and has really harsh smile lines. And okay, you clearly missed the memo, buddy.
Yeah, something about the pointy edges subconsciously will scare the children. Something like that.
Yeah. And, I'm not entirely sure the degree to which that's just repeated nonsense or it's actually true, but it is it is the standard practice. Anyway, Arthur then... Who does he snap at? Yeah, Arthur goes to Zazie, again, to this single mother's apartment, and she's like, buddy, you live down the hall, right? Isn't your name Arthur? And oh, yeah, that was all in my head. Gets the phone call. A couple of his former co-workers show up, one of whom is a giant jackass, and the other of whom is a midget.
The giant jackass is the one who gave him the gun.
Yeah.
And then when his boss questioned him, he said, "Oh, no, I didn't give him the gun. That's not my fault."
I know he asked me about potentially buying one last week. He's that guy. They show up with a bottle of alcohol to express their condolences because, I forgot. Arthur goes back to his mother's hospital room and smothers her with a pillow because he's lost it at this point.
There are so many side details in this film. It really does splinter out, but you can't ignore all of these little things that are happening. This is not a movie that occurs in a straight line, but you have to acknowledge every little detail.
Yeah, this is the crooked man walking the crooked mile, and you have to be there for every twist and turn.
That is a really good line, man.
Thank you. I get one every now and then. Anyway, he shows up. He kills his mother. His friends, his former colleagues show up to express their condolences about her death. He, downplays it. He has. This is not a joke. This movie's not scary to me in the traditional sense. But he has, like, what I think is genuinely one of the scariest lines you can say to another human being. In that scene with those two guys, when he just kind of looks over it and when they're kind of like, okay, how's it going? And he says, I stopped taking my medication and now I feel a lot better. Like, buddy, that is your giant red warning sign. You get out. He winds up killing, Randall, the big guy?
Yeah.
He stabs him to death with a pair of scissors. The other guy just, breaks down. One of the things I laughed at that I probably shouldn't have, there's so much in this movie that I laughed at that there were like 5 other people. I go to the earliest show possible on these things because I don't like crowds, and I like the experience of the theater, but I dislike the communal aspect of it. I just don't like people. There's a few different things that I laughed at that I might have got a few weird looks. But when the midget he tells this guy, you were always nice to me. I do appreciate that. I'm not going to hurt you. You go on and leave. When he goes to leave, but Arthur had reset the chain lock and he literally can't reach it.
That was actually funny. It was making me nervous because I was so convinced that since he had to go back and get Arthur and unlock it, that's when Arthur was going to kill him.
Yeah, that was going to be the point. Oh, I gave you a chance. But no, he goes up, he unlocks it, he lets him out. The fact that this poor guy stuck here with a man you just watched violently murder someone gives you a pass, and you can't physically undo the chain lock because you can't reach it. That's a metaphor for something, but I'm not sure what. Anyway, he lets him out. His friend, I imagine, runs and finds the cops because they show up a little bit later and chase him onto the subway. Where
get the Joker dance.
I really want to know.
I'm calling it now. This is going to be the new social media challenge.
Do the Joker dance.
Find some stairs and do the Joker dance to. Okay, I know that song, but I don't know. I've never actually known the title to that song. Whatever it is.
Should you pull up your pants and do the Joker dance? Right, Rob?
Mark, that's not the right reference. Here's what I want to do, because he does that same dance more than once. I want to know if the song in that scene is actually what Joaquin Phoenix was hearing in his head when he did that or not. I want to know what music was in his head as he's doing that bizarre dance.
Do, you'll be a woman soon.
Wow.
You're not singing the song from Gotham by Gaslight.
I sing a lot of different songs, Alexis. I'm like a human jukebox.
Oh, I know.
Anyway, he gets chased.
There's also that rally going on.
There's going to be a Occupy Wall Street rally. I don't know.
It's all these people who are so offended by Thomas Wayne and the clown comment that they're all showing up to protest him, and they're all wearing clown makeup.
He gets onto a subway car just packed with these clowns, and he uses them to kind of escape, and the cops are coming through, and everyone is worked into a frenzy about not just Thomas Wayne, but all of it, the system, the people, the building, all of it. So these cops trying to get through, somebody takes offense to this, grabs at his gun, it discharges, brawl ensues, Joker heads off, does another little dance.
A little jig. By the way, I wish Todd Phillips was either aware of or had remembered the I think it's the WTF is what it with the act was the letters. The World Trade WTO World Trade Organization protests in Seattle back in I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s. If I haven't mentioned, in Seattle, where the image, sort of the guy standing in front of the tank in Beijing picture of the WTO protest was somebody threw a fucking brick through a Starbucks window. I wish he had remembered that or been aware of it and evoked that here, in the midst of everyone putting on Joker masks and protesting and grabbing at cops. Just kind of turn the camera slightly and see someone throw a fucking brick through a McDonald's or something. Would have been perfect.
For no reason other than because this is what we do.
Yes.
This film really is an interesting exercise in studying mob mentality. you think about it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at before, is how quickly civilization can dissolve in the face of a mob and how easy it is to become a mob.
In a lot of ways, yeah. Anyway, he gets to the Tonight Show in the Joker makeup. He has a terrible monologue where he blames all of his problems on everybody else. The only character in this entire movie to call him on some of his bullshit is Robert De Niro at the end going, buddy, all I'm hearing is a lot of self-pity. And if I do have a major criticism of The Craft, it is
how on the nose that whole scene was.
Some of it's that. Some of it's just the complete and utter lack of
subtlety, deftness.
No. Okay, deftness, yes. Just a bit of even like pseudo grounding in reality, and maybe there's reasons.
I was gonna say maybe it's the utter lack of subtext. It was as if they got to the end of this and they knew the message they were trying to convey with this film, and nobody had any earthly idea how to put that on film to a modern audience in a comic book film in 2019. So they just said, "Fuck it, just have him yell."
Yeah, that's a real problem. Anyway, he yells. He shoots Robert De Niro in the face.
Oh no! Wait, you gotta do the joke though.
Well, first he confesses that he was the one who killed those 3 stockbrokers, which up until now no one had figured out who it was.
Yeah. He confesses to that. He confesses to a few other things. He again blames Thomas Wayne and society and everybody else. He doesn't.
I've got the I have the line. I've got the joke. I've got it pulled up.
There's 2. I mean, the first one was knock knock.
Yeah, no, the what do you get joke.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's face it, everyone is going to be quoting this joke.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's going to get old real fast, but they're going to do it.
This is going to become the new version of the Huey Lewis and the News speech from American Psycho. Everyone's going to be putting it as their status. The joke is, what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? You get what you deserve. You get what you fucking deserve. Bang.
Can I let me go ahead and admit that go ahead and make fun of me if you want. I don't really care. But I was let me couch this appropriately. I wasn't shocked that I wasn't shocked by the act of shooting somebody. God knows I watch enough of that. It was...
Your favorite show is The Wire. I'd think you'd be a little nerd.
It's the context. It's someone saying, if you take people who are already suffering under extreme anxiety and distress, and you take away all their social supports, and then you bully them and treat them meanly, they're gonna violently react. Some of them, not all of them. Some resiliency is a thing. I don't want to get into it right here and now, but some people will react violently. And so when he was like, "You get what you fucking deserve," and he shoots Robert De Niro, legitimately horrified. Because of everything I just said. Not the act of actually shooting him, but that being the exclamation point on this idea of most of Arthur Fleck's character is resoundingly preventable. And yet, he is a thing that exists in the world 10, 100,000-fold. 10, 100, 1,000, not like... Okay. So
I know what you meant.
So, and it's some of it's not preventable. There are genetics involved here, but some of this is just poor choice on some parts. Some of it's poor circumstance, and others it's complicated. It's immense, and that's just a moment on screen in a fictional story that overly resonated with me. And it was frightening and sad all at the same time for me.
Fair enough. Anyway, he is arrested, and in one of the many derivative scenes in this movie, and if I have a major complaint about this movie, it is that it is very much derivative rather than original. They take him through the police car, takes him through a mob scene. His monologue and his violent murder of Robert De Niro has sparked riots across the city of Gotham. But one of the groups drives into the car that's taking him with an ambulance, pulls him out. He gets to do a little dance on the roof of the car. We see Thomas and Martha Wayne get murdered by...
For only the billionth time on screen. If I never see Thomas and Martha or Uncle Ben get killed on screen again, it'll be too soon.
Have they ever killed Uncle Ben on screen, or do we just see his body?
Amazing Spider-Man.
I didn't watch it. I have good taste.
I want
to
to know.
Take your word for it.
We watch him die in the Sam Raimi one. I don't know if they actually. No, they show it in the. They show it in the third one because that one they have to do the flashback,
the flashback
to retcon fucking Sandman in there.
Because reasons.
For the record, who else, when they saw the movie theater, had Zorro on it, just kind of put their hands and said, "Up, here we go."
That is the movie they were seeing.
Alexis, do you remember when we were talking about Gotham by Gaslight, and I was like, what is this fetish that modern creatives have working for DC? They can't get away from Bruce and Catwoman. That, like, it's just like they can't come up with anything else. Everything now is Bruce and Selina. I should you should be consistent here. It's all, whatever situation they want to put modern Batman in always involves Catwoman. They can't get away from it. The other thing people can't seem to get away from, fucking killing Batman's parents. Boy, am I over this.
I mean, look, I appreciate you being over it, but that is kind of the inciting incident that creates Batman.
I don't fucking care anymore. These people cannot help themselves. This has become like a Pavlovian tick at this point. They're like, listen, we're doing something that moderately, in a minute way, deals with Batman. We gotta kill Tom and Martha Wayne. Like, I'm waiting for it to happen in Pennywise, and it's several years before Bruce is even fucking born.
Can I also just say that, look, I think the best... I know the story gets a lot of crap, but I did kind of get a kick out of the last time when they actually twisted that for whatever that Flashpoint event was, where it's Bruce that dies in that alleyway shooting. Thomas becomes Batman, and Martha, in her sanity breaks, and she becomes the Joker.
Yeah, that's the Flashpoint.
And that's fine. At least it's something a little bit different. I'm more commenting on there are just certain things in like modern film and television making that I feel like it's either the studios or the creatives can't just seem to get away from. Like, they can't help themselves. And it's as a viewer, like I said, this is one of those. Like I said, Joker wasn't a completely like earth-shattering fucking experience for me. There were eye roll moments for me, and this was the biggest one. My eyes almost rolled down in the back of my head, down my throat, and out my ass during that.
Anyway, Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot. Bruce is left alive because
Batman.
I hate to admit, though, I did kind of laugh a little bit that to move it to the actual time period that this was set, it had to be Zorro the Gay Blade.
That is true.
Because I'm sitting there going, the big thing about it always being Zorro was that was part of Bruce's inspiration for becoming Batman. He took a lot from Zorro, but Zorro the Gay Blade, what Batman would take inspiration from that?
Hello, I'm fabulous.
Well, look, the purple Batman we're gonna get, that's the sequel to this.
By the way, when Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot for the 14 zillionth time, they say, the guy says, "Hey, Thomas, you get what you deserve." Dick.
Bob.
Anyway, again, Joker does his little Joker dance on the hood of a wrecked car. Sometime in the future, order is restored. He's in Arkham, talking with his doctor, therapist, caseworker, some official. And I don't know if any of you might remember this, but I think I said if this would have been months ago, that if I were to write this movie, my ending would have been him in Arkham talking to his doctor going, well, that's a very compelling story and completely different from the one you told me yesterday. And we get to that moment and I go, if I actually called this, because I don't get to do that very often. But no, he was just imagining a joke. And again, it would not shock me if this entire movie was just a delusion he was thinking up to amuse himself while in that therapy session. And again, that's the whole joke is, I did this whole thing, and that's actually what caused Batman, and that's why I'm in here, and isn't that funny? The last thing we see, he tells his doctor or whatever, you wouldn't get the joke. We see him walking out of that room, leaving bloody footprints, and then he gets chased around by an orderly a little bit in the background. Now, again, there's a few things we didn't touch on. There's details, there's minutia, but man, this is just, again, normally the plot, if I were to just do a straight plot synopsis for this, it's a lot faster, but a lot less interesting. So, Mark, anything we haven't already touched on, where do you want to start with this?
Another really, I don't know how much of this we did in the plot synopsis. If I'm repeating something, I apologize, but I really wanted to stress it because it was one of those scenes devoid of the overall social commentary where, when I made the statement before, like, this is scarier than the horror movies I've seen this year, I was mostly referring to this one scene when he, after the bit with his mom in the hospital and Arkham and everything, and he goes to Zazie Beetz' apartment and the veil is lifted and you realize that it was all a delusion. I'm
really kind of hoping he killed them. And we just didn't. It just happened off screen, kind of.
Well,
thing.
that was so. There's a lot. There's some cringy elements to this movie in the sense of, because he has these socially awkward spectrum moments scattered throughout the movie, and it kind of comes to a head where he's in the apartment. And when you realize that they don't actually have a relationship, that after the bit in the elevator, they didn't deal with each other again, and he just imagined they were in a relationship. And so she's reacting to basically this person who broke into her apartment. And let's just break this down to its least common denominators. You have a single woman with a child dealing with a grown adult man who has broken into an apartment, who looks angry and sad and everything else, and you don't know what he's going to do next. And I know for me, I was really anxious during that scene that he was going to kill both of them. And I didn't want that. There was nothing about these. This isn't a Reggie the Reckless thing where it's just like, well, good. I hope you fucking die. You've referenced it enough times. I feel like he's my brother. So
he doesn't die though. It's so annoying.
But this isn't somebody you're Zazie Beetz, devoid of your personal opinion of her and her acting career and her position in the Deadpool movies. You don't want to see her die. You certainly don't. You're not cheering for a situation where a grown man breaks into a single woman's apartment and kills her and her daughter. You're just not. And if you are, there's something wrong with you. So,
you're not my therapist.
So, I was legitimately anxious during that scene, and it was very cringy and very anxiety-inducing and very horrifying for me. All right, where do we want to start with this? Let's move away from some of the psychodynamic and socio-political elements of this movie and just talk about craft work here. The cinematography is great. Joaquin Phoenix, I think, is in almost every frame of this movie, and he gives a tour de force performance. We often talk about actors who eat the scenery. I've often joked that some of them are having sex with the scenery.
Like Leonardo DiCaprio.
There's none of that here. I think he gives an appropriately subdued and excitable performance when the scene calls for it. For all of Todd Phillips's issues as a director, I thought he worked well with Joaquin, and Joaquin worked well with him, and they worked well with the material such as it was. So I'm all for Joaquin Phoenix at least being nominated for an Oscar, if not winning the damn thing for Best Actor. He deserves it.
I can't think of a better performance that I have seen so far this year.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not like I've watched a lot of artsy films, though I just did buy my ticket for Judy, so there's that. This Friday. Yeah, Judy Garland.
Are you saying that for the listeners, or are you saying because you want a reaction out of us?
I'll go either way. So moving on. Everybody else in this movie, I think, hits the pitches they're told to hit, and whether those pitches are cringy, or nails on a chalkboard for you, like Thomas Wayne, for example. I think the actor who plays Thomas Wayne hits the pitch the director was going for. That pitch in and of itself is very nails on a chalkboard. Like, I'm sure people act that way. I would bet my life and my house on it, but it's not pleasant to watch. And certainly, his interactions with Arthur elicit sympathy in that moment. I'm not saying you should have sympathy for this murderer, but I'm saying there are moments devoid of the rest of the picture where I, again, empathize with this character because of the shitty people around him, and how they're treating him. And Thomas Wayne kind of jumps to the top of that list. And it was interesting because it was sort of the mirror, like you said before, it was sort of the mirror approach to the Thomas Wayne character, who is usually portrayed as benevolent and, somebody who, when they die, you feel bad for Bruce, not just because he lost a parent, but, this good person was taken in a shitty situation. It's like, no, he's a shitty human being in this iteration of the story. And I would say that's pretty true for everybody in the cast. They're told, here's your character, here's your motivations, here's the pitch we're going for, and I don't think anybody's off pitch. Here's the big problem I have with Joker. It's muddled thematically, I think. I think the presentation and the message is somewhat muddled and awkwardly handled. I feel like I feel like the whole thing, which really did need sensitive, deft, thin hands to handle this and present it in a way that evokes more than just sort of gut reactions, was kind of handled by a guy with big hands and fat fingers, and he just sort of fumbled the whole fucking thing. It's saved by cinematography and performance, and some pretty interesting action scenes and whatnot, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I think this presentation of the Joker, he's supposed to be like this cautionary tale of we should, hey, if you were on Facebook today, Ellen DeGeneres said we should be kind to each other. Thank you, Ellen. I agree. we should be, as a society, taking care of one another. The village is burning. We need to fix the village because it does take a village to raise a child.
For the record, if you actually went and read the responses to her tweet, it's kind of scary how many people are saying
"Die, Ellen,
no,
die." Go ahead.
Yeah, despite how much crap we're currently going through with our president, there's a lot of people who haven't forgiven George W. Bush for the shit he did.
Yeah, well...
Look, we've not had a decent president in my lifetime. Deal with it.
Moving on. So where I'm going with this is, you as a viewer go through this weird roller coaster, and I don't know if it really works in the film's favor, where he's sympathetic, but he's not... some of this is due to mental illness, and some of it is due to his poor reaction to bad things happening to him. It's muddled, it's confusing, and I'm not sure when it was over what, as an audience member, you're supposed to come away with. I think people who are having issues and already would possibly act out inappropriately would easily use this as an excuse to act inappropriately. And that's why when I told you guys I'm wrestling with how to talk about this. I'm really struggling with, well, what are you trying to say in this movie? Because I don't think they knew. You know, I used the phrase when we were talking about BH 90210 that I feel like the creative on that was, here's the thing, it exists. We're not taking a position. Have fun with that. To go ahead, take sides. And I feel like that's a lot of the Joker. It's like, here's the thing, it exists. React. We're going to step back. Have fun, kids. And I'm like, well, that's not a strong position at all. That's no position. You're just showing a thing that exists. And this movie needs a strong point of view. It's like they editorialized by saying, hey, things are shitty, and we shouldn't be shitty to each other. But what do you think? Well, that dulls the movie for me. You understand what I'm saying, Robert?
I do.
Okay.
And I have a few things about this, but Alexis, I want to make sure that you get your however much sense you feel like throwing into this one. What are your thoughts on this? What are your takeaways?
Well, talking craft-wise, firstly, I think it's important to point out that the director, Todd Phillips, this, I think, is his first serious drama. This is the guy who gave us Old School, Due Date, Road Trip, and all 3 Hangover movies.
War Dogs. Yeah, look, I hate this man's movies.
Hey, real quick, because you brought up War Dogs, and I want to make sure that this gets brought up. I was thinking about it earlier, and I'll give you back the floor, Alexis. He did say that he made War Dogs, and quote unquote, War Dogs didn't set the world on fire. And this goes directly to some of the critics not being able to get out of their own way. But this movie and his participation in it illustrates where we are in film right now. You have a director. He has an idea. He has a position. And he wants to go ahead and make a movie that talks that position. But he can't because no one will go see it. So the studio says, we're not going to pay for your money that talks about the state of man in the world right now. And the answer is always, but what if I do it with a comic book character? Here's all the money. Have fun. That's where we are. This movie got made because he wanted to comment on modern society and where we are in the breaking of man's psyche, but couldn't do it unless he did it with a comic book character because otherwise nobody else would go see it. And I both love and hate that about modern film right now. But go ahead, Alexis.
So you kind of derailed my train of thought. Thanks for that.
That's what I'm here for.
I really don't know what else to say that we haven't covered so far. This is a film that you really don't anticipate what it's going to be like. It's not your traditional comic book film in any way, shape, or form. There are moments about this film that are brilliant. But this is also a film that, to be honest, I don't know if I really want to see again, at least not anytime soon, because it is dark, and it does get horribly depressing. And it takes a lot out of you. This is a movie that I walked out of the theater, and I just kind of swallowed hard. I'm like, okay, that was a thing. Drove home, and told my husband, I need to go watch My Little Pony right now. I need bright colors to cheer myself up.
That was your version of hugging your child, eh?
Well, I have my dogs.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, as far as me, personally, I'm torn on this because there's some things about this movie that are great. Again, Joaquin Phoenix's performance, tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Not a bad thing to say about it. It's interesting. I mean, again, he is on screen for pretty much this entire movie. I cannot think of a full scene that he is not in this movie for. There might be a couple of cuts that he isn't, but as far as actual scenes, no, he's in all of them. And he does a tremendous job. Some of the shots are pretty good. Some of them, not so much. We mentioned it before. This is a movie that is absolutely devoid of subtlety or subtext, or the ability to even reference that those things exist. There's also, I think, a couple of things about this movie that, from a craft perspective, as I sit here thinking about it, both bother me and have a very convenient explanation away from that, while makes sense, is also deeply unfulfilling relative to some of the issues I think the problem brings up.
Anyone else think this movie is going to quote-unquote get analyzed for years to come by pretentious film students who claim that it's a lot deeper than it actually is?
Yes. If not film students, then dude bros who still think that, Fight Club is not a giant steaming pile of crap. It is. Or, boy, we sure do love some of the language and some of the language play in American Psycho. I mean, fair enough, there's some decent dialogue here or there, but really, it's not a good movie. I'm not making some kind of esoteric comment about how I fundamentally oppose movies that are muddied in their conclusion or deal with murder. Neither of those things bother me. I just don't think it's a very well executed film.
I like American Psycho and Fight Club.
Look, fair enough. What you like. I'm not here to... There's plenty of things that are not all that good that I like. I acknowledge this.
No, that's what private chats are for.
Look, arguing about that stuff is what we have Facebook group messages for. Yes.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to argue that those films are deeper than they are. I'm just going to say, no, I enjoy it. I like Fight Club because I think it's enjoyable, and I like American Psycho because I really like Christian Bale's performance in it.
Here's what I'll tell you. I think Joker will be misunderstood for years to come like Fight Club was.
Also very true.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the two movies I'm going to reference to kind of bring up different points about this. One of them is another character study. This one, There Will Be Blood, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, who is similar to Joaquin Phoenix in this in almost every scene. There is one scene off the top of my head. I haven't rewatched There Will Be Blood in a while, but I believe there's a singular scene that takes place between Paul Dano, his character, and his parents after Daniel beats the crap out of him. I can't explain that movie if you haven't seen it. Great movie. But there is one scene that is utterly devoid of Daniel Day-Lewis, and that's it. He's in the rest of that movie. I think where I draw the contrasting point is I don't think anyone or any really thing about this movie, about Joker, apart from Joaquin Phoenix, does anything for me. Again, there's a few bits of good cinematography. Not going to pretend otherwise. There's some good use of some of the sound. Some of the soundtrack is quite good. But on the whole, if there's not Joaquin Phoenix, there's nothing of interest or quality in this movie. Again, and I bring up There Will Be Blood as a point of contrast because that also is unbelievably reliant on the main character and the main actor, to the point where without them, one does wonder if is there anything really of value? And in that case, I think there is. And again, the structure of the movie, of There Will Be Blood, limits that, but there is stuff beyond this singular performance that is worth watching. The fact that in this there isn't is, for me, a failing of elements of the film craft. Because even in character study, some of the supporting stuff should still be, again, interesting or of quality or whatnot. And here, I don't think that's the case. Again, whether that's what they were asked to do, where the point of failure along all the possible faults lie, I'm open to, I'm not throwing anyone in particular under the bus. This is a problem. 2, and this goes to more of kind of the commentary aspect that this movie tries to pull off. I don't know if anyone, any of you guys or anyone listening, has actually seen, there's a movie starring Edward Norton called American History X.
Or Red Film.
Love it.
I imagine, Mark, you've only seen it once.
American History X?
I say that not as a shot because that's the kind of movie you really only see once.
I used to own it, and I watched it a bunch.
Fair enough.
No, I get what you're saying. Very similar to how I felt after Joker. That's a film that you walk away, say, that was amazing. Gulp, I need a drink.
Requiem for a Dream, that kind of thing.
Ugh, I can't. I've seen that once, and I actually cannot watch it again. It messed me up too much.
Oh, God, Requiem for... Yeah. That, Danny Darko, like, I've seen all those movies. Is it
Donnie Darko.
Sorry, Donnie Darko.
I was waiting.
That's the Pornhub version. Anyway.
Why are you wearing that rabbit suit? Why are you wearing that man suit?
Donnie Darko. Run Lola Run. Yeah, Requiem for a Dream. Like, a lot of those movies. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of these. Like, despite my reputation for being the explosions guy, there was this long period of time where I watched, like, shit tons of film from, like, 70s blaxploitation through, like, every modern high film classic there was to watch. And some of these, I got through it once, and I'm never doing it again.
Yeah.
So...
But point being, I think American History X largely falls into that category of great, see it once, but I'm not sure I ever want to put myself through that again. Not because it's bad, but because it is the type of movie it is.
It's a gut punch. It is a gut punch of a film, and it is incredible that it's a movie that can do that to you.
Yeah, my point being, there was some criticism of that movie, and it is widely acknowledged as a great movie. Norton was nominated for the Oscar for Best Actor that year. But in some of the criticism I read of it, I think this was actually Roger Ebert. So I'm not entirely sure, so don't completely quote me, but I think that was. Who mentioned that throughout the course of the movie, again, I'm trying to quote from memory here, the liberal counter-argument to the position of the neo-Nazis never really finds an on-screen character voice. Now, I don't find that a very compelling argument in that case because, well, a couple of reasons. One, we're actually watching the arc of two characters realizing how utterly fallacious that position is. So we don't really need... I mean, it's not like it's presented to begin with as a viable political or social position. It's simply the one they adopt. And the inherent extremity of it tends to mean that you don't really need a strong counter voice. Its own existence serves as it counters itself, basically, in terms of how inherently extreme it is. We don't really, I mean, by the same token, you don't really need someone on screen saying, hey, the Nazis are bad. That's relatively self-evident to any functional adult.
Hey, in case that point was lost on the audience, Nazism is not good.
And there's a
bit... no idea how hard I am biting my tongue right now, guys.
We appreciate you.
But my point being... I think this is a movie that, because of the way it's structured and the commentary it's trying to give, is actually... It does need, in some respect, the counterpoint to, well, my life sucks, the world's fallen apart, let's just burn everything to the ground. And... Now, again, the reason you're not going to get it, and the reason you can, and the way to explain it away, is just the fact that this entire movie is presented, again, from Arthur's perspective, and he is an expressly unreliable narrator. And okay, fair enough. Like, I understand it from a purely artistic standpoint, but this movie, I think, really did need something to point out just how inherently fallacious the perspective is that Arthur winds up adopting. And don't get me wrong, the fact that his solution to, well, my life is not what I thought it is, I've suffered traumatic brain injury, you know what, let's just, murder and burn and pillage, and oh boy, isn't it all just so glorious.
It's one of the nice things about the Dark Knight movie, which a lot of people referenced in reviewing this as a contrast, is that you have, the Joker is one perspective, Batman is another perspective, and then kind of there to sort of referee between two different positions and present maybe an alternative is Alfred. Like Michael Caine does, I think, a really good job in his part of saying, hey, there's another way to look at things that isn't these polarizing opposite points of view.
I think you get both Alfred and Gordon in The Dark Knight, who do kind of wind up playing the middle ground kind of between those 2 points of view. And you don't get any of that here. And again, any rational person sees this and goes, I can appreciate elements of the commentary from an artistic perspective. I can appreciate, the thought experiment of, how near the world, the precipice that the world exists on, because society is largely a shared delusion. Not my position necessarily, but one that I've seen adopted. And again, any thinking person can go, okay, fun thought experiment, but here's all the ways this is a terrible idea. This is a demonstrably false position. But the fact that the movie does not have at all a even remotely coherent counter-argument, again, the closest you get is at the very end, Robert De Niro's character, again, calling him on his BS, but at this point, we almost are, I hate to say we're rooting for the Joker, because I can't speak to who anyone roots for in these movies necessarily, but the setup and the execution of that is not actually a refutation of his position. It's just an excuse for him to scream more dialogue about how the world is unfair.
I want to say we're rooting for him, but he is the one that we're the most engaged in.
He's the only engaging character.
I'm not gonna lie, I had a moment during that whole thing where he it was an earlier scene where he was like, why is everyone so rude? And I don't get up and cheer in movies because it's a fucking movie, not a concert. But man, I really had to stop myself because I just had one of those, from your lips to God's ears, buddy. I have been there. Just this whole idea of you just feel like nobody around you is sort of adhering to societal norms and appropriate behavior, social contracts, that sort of thing. And sometimes you just feel like you're alone.
The common standard of decency has sunk so far.
Yeah, and so you just kind of look around going, what? How? Why are you all so shitty? And so that's what I mean by why I struggled with this movie so much, because there were moments of it where I'm like, yeah, I get it. I hear you. I've been there, and I feel for you. You shouldn't murder people.
Yeah.
It's not
great lesson to be learned, kids.
Yes, people are shitty and social contracts are burning around us, but murder isn't the answer. Thank you for joining us on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
It is almost never the answer.
I think one of the things I did enjoy most about the framework of this movie, when you think about it, when we were talking about Gotham by Gaslight, the comic, I was discussing how I had been hoping for more references to the Batman universe. This film has very minimal references to the Batman universe, and I was very happy with that.
Well, that's Go ahead.
I'm wondering if we were going to see names dropped, about maybe some of the other people in Arkham Asylum or something. But we don't. The truth is, if you just change Gotham to New York and you change the Wayne family to, I don't know, the Vanderbilts or the Rockefellers or some big name like that, then you remove pretty much every connection that this film has to the DC universe. And I was really glad about that. I normally, I'm the kind of person that says, yes, I want more references. I was very happy walking out that they didn't pull that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I wish people would stop calling this a comic book movie. It's a movie that has a comic book character in it. But this isn't a traditional comic book movie. And there is a difference. I think a comic book movie is its own thing. It's its own structure. It's its own way of interpreting myth and fairy tale and story. Where this is a whole other thing. And that's why I brought up the whole Todd Phillips thing. Like he wanted to tell this story about the breakdown of society, and you could invent a vehicle out of whole cloth, but no one will get in the car with you. However, take a piece of Americana iconography and use that as your vehicle. You will get people. Now people are coming to the theater, and. What's more popular than the Batman mythos at this point? Star Wars? Not even that anymore.
Not after no one could handle The Last Jedi not being their fan service.
Right. Right. So that's my point. Like, there are very few things right now that are safe bets in terms of vehicles for a message about society. So this works on that level. It's just a goddamn shame people can't get out of their own way and see that.
I'm completely okay with that. Any other major things I wanted to talk about with Kraft in this movie?
It's kind of disturbing how every time we try to talk Kraft, we end up getting pulled into the psychological discussion of this film.
Again, I think that's because there's not a whole lot here apart from what the journey this character goes on means to us individually. And for better or for worse, again, some of the dialogue is meh. Some of it's pretty ham-fisted. Some of the narrative is really bizarre, and it jumps all over the place. And again, I get that it's for a purpose, but it just is. Again, the music's okay. Some of it's better than others. There's a few... this movie very nearly had that... gave me that... It didn't, but... similar vibes to, Return of the King, when you're not quite sure, this would be a good place to end it. This would be a good place to end it. And is that going to be the last shot? And it just, again, it doesn't quite reach that level because the time between those moments is not nearly as protracted. There is still a bit of it.
I probably would have been okay with him going, that's, and then it cuts, and that's the end of the movie. I really didn't need to see Gotham burning. I really didn't need to see random mugger number 5 shoot the Waynes. And even if you cut to black, directed by Todd Phillips, blah blah yakety schmackety DC Black Label, and then come back on again, and then there's that scene of him in Arkham, and then he says, what are you laughing at? Do you want to share? And he was like, you wouldn't get the joke. And then finish the credits. I'm okay with the movie ending that way. I think that whole last bit with him kind of watching his handiwork in the world burning, that's one of those moments of, we got it. Was this really necessary?
But you don't understand. They have references to all the other Jokers. If we don't get him leaning out the window of a car while a city burns, we won't have referenced Heath Ledger's version.
Yeah.
Okay. Quick question, though, guys. What do you think about future movies from the DC Black Label?
I really
What are you guys thinking?
I really wish they wouldn't. This isn't a studio that's really known for deft hands and subtlety. I think I think they hit a lucky ball into the bleachers and got themselves a grand slam. Quit while you're fucking ahead, Warner Brothers.
They're probably already planning out origin stories for other villains now.
I just read Joaquin Phoenix is open to the idea of a sequel to this, to which I say, please don't.
Agreed.
Yeah, I have no interest in a sequel for this. I will say that his reasoning for saying that makes a lot of sense. His point wasn't financially related. His point was, where we left it and my time in the character, there's so many other things we could do. And there's so many other interesting things that could be explored. And if those come up, I'd be okay to return.
So we covered...
Now, unfortunately, that's going to be construed as, well, hey, maybe he can show up alongside our new Batman, and he can piss off Jason Momoa, and stop it. Just stop it with that.
So we did Brian Azzarello's Joker on Source Material this week in honor of this film, and I said, that story is a really good story. It's a germ of a really good idea with the wrong character. Following Jared Leto's Joker dressed up as Heath Ledger's Joker, traveling around Gotham reclaiming his crime territory, isn't the right character to do that with. Do that with either Penguin or Two-Face. I actually think Two-Face would have made the best choice, because then you could play with his schizophrenia. If they're going to continue to do villain-related...
If they're going to go the Sony route.
Yeah, well, I was going to say villain-related artisan pictures type of movies for, not necessarily just their villains, but like any character. I think Two-Face would be one to do it with. I think if you can get a character who can really not Tommy Lee Jones's version of the character. Oh, that was terrible.
Yeah, it's a crying shame that I don't think they could. I don't think you would want to get Aaron Eckhart back for the role for a variety of reasons, but he was a great Two-Face.
He was a great Two-Face in the story they were telling in The Dark Knight. I actually don't, because when I think of Two-Face, I think of somebody who is one part John Gotti, one part schizophrenic, and and a character who can successfully deal with the split personality element of that character while also being a threatening, bigger than life, menacing mob boss.
So
I don't know.
You're advocating for Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
He's got to play it better than Venom.
Hey, mark that spot on your bingo cards, everybody.
No one could have done that. No one.
But let's run with this thought experiment for a moment. Tom Hardy as Two-Face, and he's the one that gets out of Blackgate, and he's the or Arkham, either way. He's the one that, I don't know if you guys have ever read Joker by Brian Azzarello, but that's the plot of the thing. Is Joker gets out of Arkham Asylum, and he's like, I'm not crazy anymore, huzzah! And then I was referring to him as Bob from the '89 Batman movie, but like Johnny Frost or something like that, follows Joker around.
Gun.
You are my number one guy.
I love that.
Just me and Robert tonight are like wearing those like barbershop quartet hats and just tap dancing for everybody tonight.
I just love how nobody realizes that as cool as Bob was in that movie, he played the wormy sidekick in the Conan sequel.
That's right.
That's true. That's
anyway,
very true. He did.
So to get to my point, following Two-Face around as he's trying to reclaim his crime territory, and and having this sort of passenger seat visage of Two-Face sort of trying to reconcile his schizophrenia with his mob boss mentality, I think would be an interesting story for that part of DC's filmmaking.
Especially if you do the whole, I was in Arkham because I was insane, not because I was convicted of any crime thing. Mm-hmm. So he finally kind of gets it under control, and they're like, well, okay, we don't actually have any charges for you. out you go back into society. And watching him struggle to maintain that, watching him see the degree to which he was deceiving people, the degree to which he wants to no longer be damaged in that way, it could be really interesting.
But yeah, I mean, there are plenty of characters within the DC pantheon that could do with, that could be vehicles for a higher level order of theme and philosophy portrayed on film. I just don't think Warner Brothers has the capability of doing it. I think occasionally they come across like a Peter Jackson, or I want to say it's Christopher Nolan that's also got like a working agreement with Warner Brothers. They come along and they're great filmmakers, and pretty much everything they do is phenomenal. And so it's kind of like, here's a blank check, go make a movie. But I think generally speaking, they're too intrusive, they're too invasive, and it's a miracle this movie got to the point that it got to without it being massacred by studio notes. I mean, at this point, I'm wondering why there wasn't a red cage in it, and the Fiend... Never mind.
Yeah, just stop.
You know the joke I'm making.
Yes, I do. That's not the point. The point
All right.
is shame on you for making it.
So bad. Put the title on Tyson Fury. Mark that on your bingo card, everybody. All right. Anything else?
No, Alexis, unless you had anything else you wanted to touch on.
I don't know. There was so much that I was thinking about when we talked about the psychology of this film, but truth be told, I did not want to get on a soapbox. I did not want to start discussing the whole, well, yeah, when society treats those who are that ill-trodden and whatnot. I do not have the voice for that argument, nor do I feel that I am the best person to debate that kind of a side. So all I am going to say is that, yeah, I really do hope Joaquin Phoenix gets at least an Oscar nomination for this role. Especially how he transformed his body when you think about how much weight he had to lose to look that...
He lost, I think he said 54 pounds.
Well, it's amazing. He's so broad-shouldered and thick-boned. Like if you look at him in, Gladiator? Like, he's a beefy dude with a big bone structure. And so he's not Christian Bale in The Machinist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not scrawny. He's not really scrawny. He's sinewy. He's very sinewy in this film.
That's the thing. Like, and it's. I don't want to get off on a whole like fitness thing here, but it is a good lesson in body types. Like, some of us are not meant to be that thin. We don't have like the body structure for it. Like, you're supposed to be. When you have watching him like that's skinny for him, like that's emaciated, and you realize like, wow, he's a big dude. Like, I don't know like how tall he is, but he's got big shoulders. He's very wide. He's thick even when he's rail thin. Like I said, Christian Bale has a thin frame, so when he gets emaciated for roles, he really does look like he's just skin and bones. But like Joaquin Phoenix, man, he's a fucking door. He's just wide.
Yeah. He's again, I think you mentioned it, he's very broad and he's very thick through the torso. So that, there's some of those scenes when he's shirtless and laying on the couch and you can see his ribs. Like, oh, I can count those.
Yeah.
How do you still... And his stomach's all kind of sunken in. But again, like, I'm with you. I've seen The Machinist. The other Bale movie that we got really thin, Rescue Dawn. Like, I've seen actors who get really thin for stuff, and somehow, even though I know that like this is a very unhealthy weight for you to exist at, you still don't give me the. I still get like the. Pardon the expression, like the guy going through, the guy who's going through chemo,
I wouldn't know. I'm the only guy who gets chemo and still stays fat.
There was the reference for a while that anyone who just looked very unhealthily thin, like, well, you look like a cancer survivor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're referencing probably like the biggest icon of this, the biggest reference of this is Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad, who got super thin for those early chemo
Yeah.
scenes.
Oh, and for the closing one, there's some really great costuming that goes on for him at the end, because he got more back to kind of a more healthy weight, but his cancer's supposed to have come back and ravaged his body, and his response to that was, okay, I'll do a few things, but I'm not doing that again. And the costuming parties went, okay, we will get big clothes for you, and you will just look like they're hanging off of your body.
Here's some Spanx and some two big jeans. Have fun.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
All right, let's do this. We've it's almost 2 hours here, and we haven't started on the money, so let's start on the money. Here we go.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All night tonight, I've been hitting wrong buttons. All right, here we go. On a budget of between $55 to $64 million, this thing, at the time of this recording, has made $258 million. This is a smash success for Warner Brothers, and I think I want to say Shazam was at least minimally successful, and Aquaman made $1 billion. Wonder Woman made somewhere in the 700s. So, after Justice League, they've actually had a slew of successful movies under the DC imprint. So, good for Warner Brothers. You're moderately competent.
Now learn from your mistakes and learn from your successes.
Boy, that'd be nice.
Like, for the love of God, you now know what you have to do to make your studio profitable. Do not shoot yourselves in the foot.
Joker
They
obviously
only shoot themselves in the foot. That'll be something.
Yeah, this is a studio that often does the Dick Cheney going quail hunting thing. Turn left and shoot the guy in the face. Here we go. Joker was the number one movie of the weekend. It knocked Abominable from 1 to 2. People actually went and saw that. Not my kids, but other people did.
A lot of people I know that have seen it spoke very highly of it. It's just kind of it's a relatively generic, in some respects, kind of coming-of-age story, but well executed with beautiful visuals.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything bad about it. Downton Abbey fell from 2 to 3. Hustlers 3 to 4. It Chapter 2 4 to 5. Judy, which is the story of the latter years of Judy Garland, who played Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, rose from 7 to 6 and opened in a bunch of new theaters, which means I can finally go see it.
Boy, and you thought Joker was depressing.
Ad Astra fell from 5 to 7. Rambo: Last Blood 6 to 8. War debuted at number 9. Good Boys fell from 8 to 10. My People, My Country debuted at number 11. And rounding out the top 20 are The Lion King, Angels Fallen, Hobbs and Shaw, The Peanut Butter Falcon, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Overcomer, Indiana Jones and the Lost City of Gold, Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice.
Not the name of that movie.
And finally, Roger Water, Us and Them. Where we stand for the year. It's been a while since we've done this.
For the record, Joker apparently after yesterday took the single biggest Monday take of a single movie in October ever.
Yeah, it's like for movies released in October, Joker is crushing everything in its path.
Suck it, Saw.
Considering some of those latter entries into the franchise, yes.
I finally started watching that. I actually held off. I never saw Saw until just a few nights ago. You know me. I have a horrible thing about body horror and gory films and whatnot. I finally forced myself to watch it. I think the first film was brilliant. I loved it.
The first two are exceptional. After that, after that is the point when it kind of devolves into the torture porn everyone accused it of being. The first one is genuinely one of my favorite movies. It's brilliant. It's not nearly as violent as everyone made it out to be.
Yeah, because they were on such a low budget. Second one I did enjoy, but I'm not a fan of the hit-and-run cinematography that they did through so many of it. Where it's like, quick, zoom, and then it slows down, and then it's zoom, and then it slows down. That just bugs me. I hate that style.
The first 6 spots are relatively the same as it's been since the summer. Avengers, Lion King, Spider-Man, which has returned back to the Marvel Universe, kind of, sort of.
Boy,
Hallelujah.
Sony looked at that. Sony looked at the backlash and went, "That's okay. You'll follow Tom Holland, right?" And Tom Holland went, buddy, no."
Captain Marvel, Toy Story, and Aladdin. Fast and Furious, still at number 7, but has stalled at about 758 million.
Oof. That's about like 200 million shy of what it needed.
Yeah, I don't know
Look,
if that.
let this be a message. Don't put Ryan Reynolds in your movie.
Good takeaway there, Chief. Nija, 700 million. It's a Chinese Chinaman movie. I don't know what to tell you. Same thing with The Wandering Earth.
I was waiting for you to say that. You're racist.
Did you seriously say Chinese Chinaman movie?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's how he describes a localized a localized Chinese movie that only releases in China and winds up in the top 10 of the year.
Okay, so because Alexis doesn't always know my references, that is a bit that I stole from Andrew Dice Clay.
All the comedians you steal from him?
Dude, I'm 43 years old and grew up in New York. Andrew Dice Clay's on my Mount Rushmore of comedians. I mean, he's up there with Sam Kinison, if that means anything to you. George Carlin, Richard Pryor.
I would say, yeah, that explains a lot.
Yeah, it really should. And How to Train Your Dragons at number 10. Rounding out the top 20 are It, Pokemon, Detective Pikachu, Secret Life of Pets, Alita, Battle Angel, Gojira, King of the Monsters, Shazam, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, If You Could, Dumbo, that piece of shit, John Wick 3. By the way, have you heard they're doing a female-centric John Wick?
That's a
Yeah,
You know
the
what?
ballerina from John Wick 3.
You know what? Go for it. Let's see what happens.
I'm sure it'll
Might
do
be
as
great. It genuinely might be great.
I'm sure it'll do financially as well as all the other female-driven action movies. And Joker at number 20. So next, so this coming Friday, you've got Gemini Man. Who the fuck's seeing this movie? They've been this thing. The budget on the promotion for this has been huge. I've been seeing promos for Gemini Man since earlier this year, probably first quarter. It's an Ang Lee movie. It's got Will Smith in it. You know, it's a big time action movie. I just don't know if anyone cares.
This movie feels like somebody got together with a focus group and went, you know what? Big budget, action-oriented, Ang Lee, Will Smith, how can we fail? Well, let's find out.
Well, I also think somebody was...
Every early review I've read of this so far is basically saying, Will Smith, awesome. Rest of the movie, meh.
I was just, the other thing about this is one of those like demo reels for technology deal where somebody looked at The Deuce and saw James Franco playing twin brothers, and was just like, hey, let's do that same thing, but let's do an action movie with Will Smith instead of a three-season HBO show about the rise of porn in New York. Anywho, the other thing it's up against is the Addams Family animated film and something called Jexy, which I have no idea what that is.
Okay, for the record, you mentioned who's seeing Gemini Man. Shout out to Jeff Harris, who apparently got invited to like the big press release for that.
Cool.
I'm gonna go see Addams Family. I'm actually looking forward to that film.
Yeah, some of my kids. And then the following week, so I don't think this weekend really bites into Joker that hard. But I think Joker's got a really good chance of being number one movie second weekend in a row. But it'll lose to either Maleficent or Zombieland 2. I still don't understand why Sony decided to fucking do a duel with Disney for this week, because they initially had it for I think the following weekend when nothing was coming out. Like, nothing that would have really bitten into Zombieland 2. But for some odd reason, they moved it a week back because they decided to take on Disney in in one of its princess sequels. I don't understand Sony's thinking here. But yeah, it's Maleficent versus Zombieland 2 on the 18th, and I think that knocks Joker out of the number one spot. The following weekend is Black and Blue, which is the movie where the female cop sees other cops doing a bad thing and they try to kill her. A horror movie called Countdown, and the director's cut of The Current War. Again,
They're re-releasing that with the director's cut for some reason.
Yep. I don't see any of those biting into anything. I don't think anyone's going to go see them. And then
look, you and I are going to wind up seeing at least 2 of those because
which
I have
two?
to. So, the 2 you mentioned. We're doing Zombieland and Maleficent, right?
Oh, no. Yeah, I said Zombieland and Maleficent bite into Joker. And nothing coming out on the 25th does.
No.
No one's going to see those movies.
Probably not.
And then, Friday, the November 1st is Terminator, along with Arctic Dogs, Harriet, and Motherless Brooklyn. So yeah, look, I think Joker. If Joker gets to $500 million, Warner Brothers should fucking buy Todd Phillips a small island. But I think it tops out there if it even gets there at all. So, any other comments on the money here?
This will do very, very well in terms of return on investment. It'll do solidly overall at the year end. Again,
Well, it already has. I mean, less than $100 million, and it's made almost $300 million.
Yeah, solid return on investment. I don't think it'll be top 10 by year's end, but I think it'll stay in the top 20.
I'm just going to go back to what I said. Warner Brothers, you now know what you need to do. Don't screw it up.
They're going to screw it up.
Speaking of screwing it up, here we go.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right, so I'm going to read a combination of both the rotten and the fresh reviews here, because I think in both cases there were some good ones that I think made sense and were true, and in both the fresh reviews and the rotten reviews there were some real humdingers here. Oy vey.
Bring it. I am loaded for bear today.
Damian Straker of Impulse Gamer. In Joker, a suitably creepy lead performance by Joaquin Phoenix is undermined by a heavy-handed direction and a clunky screenplay.
I don't think this screenplay necessarily is clunky. It's erratic, but I do believe that's intentional. So, again, clunkiness to me is not a byproduct of, something jumping a lot, especially when it's designed the way this is. I'm not sure how true that is. Jordan
Searles.
Every time you have to pronounce the foreign names.
From OK Player. It's a ripoff of the highest order, borrowing from greater filmmakers without the nuance or intelligence to make the entire enterprise worthwhile. Okay.
Partially true, mostly false. Again, we mentioned, this is a very derivative. There's a lot of visual allusions to better work. There's a lot of inspiration taken from significantly better work. But the notion that because the screenplay never really streamlines all of this or has something new to say about it, again, you watch this movie to watch Joaquin Phoenix act. Like, nothing else about this movie is all that interesting. It's structured that way, it's designed that way. That's not to, again, we talked a while about some of the structural flaws and the craft issues. But the notion that, this whole thing, because it's deeply derivative, is utterly uninteresting. No, because the entire selling point is the singular performance, which is unaffected by that.
Annie Bundle of NBC News think.
Oof.
It turns out the piece of art that has caused such an uproar is nothing more than an incoherent, misbegotten, and embarrassingly dull 2 hours.
Okay.
Really dull. I'm sorry that, that this wasn't a very sparkly comic book film for you.
If even freaking Mark is here saying I didn't need the explosions and the razzle-dazzle and the fan edit of Captain America lifting Mjolnir to the sounds of the touch. Have you seen that on Twitter, by the way?
I know it's a thing, but I haven't watched it. By the way, they played the Flash Gordon theme on the CW Flash show tonight, and I was pantsless and cartwheeling around my living room.
I hope they feel good about blowing all of the potential profits they were making for that movie to pay that off.
Not to mention making me blow chunks from that mental image. Thank you, Mark.
Worth it.
Look, again, whatever they paid Queen through the nose for that.
Worth it. Chase,
just to make Mark happy. Fair enough.
Chase Whale of ChaseWhale.com. Come on.
Self-employed loser.
Thank you. A derivative movie that exploits mental illness and violence.
Oh, no.
Of course.
This is not an exploitative movie, okay?
Buckle in,
guys?
there's a lot of that tonight.
I really do wish people would look up the definition of exploitation as it relates to film. There is a wide, almost catastrophically large gulf between discussion of something like violence and mental illness, which this movie does, and exploitation of mental illness and violence, which this movie does not. You know, believe it or not, I'm going to make a potentially controversial statement about this movie. Not as violent as I expected it to be.
You know what? I'll give you that, actually. I with all of the warnings that we were getting and all the talks about the extra security, I was worried that scene on the subway when the cops got killed, that we were going to see just like blood splattering all over the subway windows.
Yeah, I think his total body count in this movie is what, 5?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
His mother, I forgot his mother. Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was expecting more violence than we got. The notion that this is exploitative, it's not even graphically violent. Okay, don't get me wrong. The scene when he stabs his buddy in the neck with the scissors and then bashes him into the wall, it's disturbing. But rewatch that sequence for me and tell me how much of that violence takes place in frame.
I'll even give it that the blood splatter from the 2 goons who got shot on the subway was a little shocking, but I wouldn't say exploit. I mean, it does kind of take you back, just like because they're singing, they're beating the guy up, they're laughing, and all of a sudden, bam, and there's blood on the walls. It does kind of take you out of it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of graphic violence in this movie. It's the notion that you're exploiting mental illness. Like, again, freak shows are exploitative by definition. This is not a freak show of a movie.
Victoria Alexander, Las Vegas Informer. Brilliant. See it and there is... Hang on. Brilliant. See it and there is no need to see any other film in 2019. We're getting 1917 in a few... at the end of December, beginning of January, depending on where you are in the world. Calm the fuck down, lady.
Yeah, that is a ridiculous amount of praise. Like, do you... Again, are you trying to get your quote on the DVD box here?
Probably.
Because, again, brilliant performance that saves a movie that, again, like, how much of it is structured this way intentionally? Fine. I'll set that aside. There's issues with the movie, saved by an absolute tour de force performance. But I am much more interested in 1917, which I think is going to be great. I am much more interested in... Oh, crap.
Hey, by the way, I had to move the date on that because I'm not sure when you're getting it. It comes out in limited release on Christmas and then in wide release on January 10th. And so I put it for after the wide release.
Probably a good idea.
They snuck in just under the wire for the awards.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Why wouldn't they?
No, sorry. I just love it when films do that, when it's like they obviously can't get a wide release in December, and it's like, no, quick, just get it in a few theaters so we can still qualify. I mean, obviously, that's the smart thing to do, but I still laugh when it's that blatantly obvious.
Look, it's got heavy competition from Cats.
Oh, shut up. Just shut up. Okay, now, I'm much more interested in Doctor Sleep, which I, for some reason, kind of blanked on there. Again, there's other movies that are going to be coming out that I don't know why you would suddenly go with, well, this has now won cinema. Like, cinema for 2019 has been conquered. The rest of you can just go home.
Steven Silver of Splice Today. Not nearly as compelling as the weeks of controversy leading up to its release would indicate. It's both completely ridiculous and ill-conceived.
Okay, hang on. You started off okay there. Again, I mentioned to Jeff like 2 weeks ago, I think, during our plugs for the Ground and Pound show, because he mentioned, I'm seeing Joker, my review will be going up, and I said, boy, they spun up the controversy for that out of nothing all of a sudden, didn't they? And lo and behold, that's kind of how it played. That said, the notion that this is ill-conceived is deeply, deeply inaccurate.
Here's one for you guys that I'm sure you're going to adore, and you're going to ask me, like, where can we get more of his reviews? Robert Daniels, Mediaversity Reviews.
Oof.
Mediaversity?
Mediaversity. It's like university, but with media. Get it?
Okay, I wish to curb stomp everyone related to that.
You have American History X.
Joker suggests that mental illness issues require government funding. A narrative that would actually be progressive if the film stopped there. F.
Okay, is that like, are you trying to press F to pay respects? Because shame on you. Second, okay.
No. He gave it a grade letter of F.
Grade letter F. Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was like, what are you saying? F as in they censored themselves, or
No, F letter score.
Okay. This
So
person's
what?
an idiot.
so he wanted a film about how we need to give more money from the government to mental health awareness, which frankly we do. But is that what he wanted?
This guy is at home rewatching The Wire.
No, he's never seen The Wire. Okay, again, look, if you want to have a reasoned discussion about the degree to which the government should be the entity helping to deal with mental illness, we can have that discussion. I actually do not take what this gentleman is positing as the progressive approach. In no small part, the reason that a lot of the state-run hospitals shut down in the late 60s to early 70s was because of some of the stuff Kennedy did. Now, look, Kennedy's heart may have been in the right place. You'd have to ask him.
I think some of these places they were abusive was the issue.
They
are also giant holes, for cash.
Yeah,
so you got to remember, coming up out of the 50s and the 60s, Europe starts getting back on track. The world starts manufacturing things, and suddenly, the United States has to compete again, in a world that's actually functioning. So there was a shift economically, and there just wasn't, at that time, funding for a lot of this stuff. We were still also in the middle of a Cold War.
Again, there's that, and there's Kennedy's disincentivizing of this stuff being done at the state level versus the federal level. And look, Kennedy's perspective on this was largely informed by his sister, who had a history of mental illness. I'm not accusing the man of being a terrible person. Might have been, might not have been. He's a person.
Were we talking about critical reviews here a minute ago?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yell at me to not get off on tangents about politics.
You are correct. Okay, so I'll get back on track. There is a discussion that can be had about how much should be privatized, how much should be whether this should be top down or bottom up funding. Fair enough, reasonable discussion to have. The notion that this movie's whole point is, well, the mentally ill should be just funded by the government, should be subsidized by the government, completely misses the realities of this guy's situation, apart from the stuff you wanted to talk about here in your political blog.
Dennis Schwartz of Oz's World Movie Reviews.
I hate this man so much.
The chilling takeaway I got is that the cackling laugh of the Joker gets into your head as if the filmmaker thinks that's enough to explain this sad mental illness story.
Okay. Hang on. I'm going to have to just pull the ice pick out of my head that man's stupidity just lodged there. This is a fundamentally unexplainable story, you moron! Oh, God.
Mark...
What, you really want the Joker spelled out for you in black and white? That is anathema to the character.
We gotta move on. Mark Commode of Observer UK.
Your
Joker...
last name is appropriate.
Kermode, not Commode.
Well, your accent slurred it. My apologies.
Yeah.
Change your last name, sir.
I heard commode too.
Mark Toilet of Observer UK.
There we go.
Joker looks to have the last laugh. Tee-hee!
Wow. Really?
Wait, did they actually write tee he or
No,
ha
no.
ha?
No, that's me editorializing.
Still, what a profoundly stupid sentence.
Jorge Negrete of Butaca Ancha. Joker is not challenging, daring, or risky in the least. On the contrary, Phillips adheres with discipline to the rules of the now old new Hollywood and proves to be a docile student, not a visionary.
Okay, look, I'm going to give you one pass on this. I'm going to assume there's elements of that were translated from Spanish oddly. Because otherwise, I got nothing for that. That is a garbage take. Boy, this movie does not challenge me. In fact, if I throw enough appropriate qualifiers on what conventions it follows, why, it's downright pedestrian, sir. This totally conforms to the old is new Hollywood agenda, and this director is very clearly just purely. This movie was made purely for financial reasons, don't you see? Shut up.
Nathaniel Hood of Nate Hood Reviews. This one's
loser.
This one's for you, Robert.
Oh no.
Please frame this and put it on your wall.
No.
Its brazen rejection of subtext in favor of brash surface literalism is downright Samuel Fullerian.
Oh, that hurt. That hurt my head.
I don't even get that last part. Well, I feel like I am showing my stupidity here. What?
Its brazen rejection of subtext in favor of brash surface literalism is downright Samuel Fullerian.
Okay, for the record, Samuel Fuller, screenwriter, novelist, director in the 40s, 50s, and a little into the 60s.
Okay, so apparently this guy's trying to prove that he's still paying off his film degree. Got it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking about that whole thing, and it's like, wow, you paid way too much money to go to film school, didn't you?
Yeah. Especially to only pull that reference out of your ass.
PJ Nabarro of Patrick Nabarro. Okay. All the worst inflections of comic book origin fetish, dangerously misunderstanding complex themes from Scorsese's films, and glibly piggybacking on zeitgeisty social issues.
Okay, stop. Just stop.
Boy, does this guy live in a high tower away from the people.
Look, let's do a couple.
I love when people take when a movie has, tries to tackle social issues and they say, oh, they're trying to tackle under the zeitgeist. Like, go to hell.
Yeah, buddy, you couldn't even have spelled zeitgeist if you didn't. Back in the day when you had to know how to spell it. Like, you're predictive. You Googled that. Well, it's not. What's that word? I like the way it sounds, but okay. Oh, zeitgeist. You don't even know what it means.
Yeah, I'm going back to a Family Guy episode where Brian says, I contributed to the zeitgeist. And go, do you even know what the zeitgeist is? And he goes, if I didn't know. I wouldn't use it in a sentence.
Yeah, that's what this guy is. Also, can we just, in all seriousness, again, there's no secret that the taxi driver influence is heavy in this movie. Can I just say, I have never been as enamored with Taxi Driver as many other people. I get why, but
Yeah, one scene. Look, I think if you're like a serious film person, there's a lot to take from Taxi Driver. But I think as far as its place in the sort of social economy over the decades since it's been released, people people remember one scene from that movie, and it's him looking in the mirror going, "Are you looking at me? Oh, I'm looking at you. Looking at me. Hey, boo boo." That's it. That's the whole fucking movie for a lot of people.
the number of people who don't even know Jodie Foster was in that movie would shock you.
I don't really get people who say that a film is bad because it's obviously taking inspiration from another movie. I mean, guess what? Shazam took a couple of scenes that were obviously making fun of Big. Does that make that film any worse?
It didn't make it better, but...
Hey, I still like that movie, thank you.
My kids, I showed it to my kids a couple of weekends ago. They loved it.
Oh, great. So between that and the Addams Family, I'm apparently on the same viewing level as your children.
Hey, look.
Would you like us to adopt you? I'm not going to promise good meals, though. That's on you.
Look, jokes aside, like what you like, man. If you like stuff that broadly appeals to smaller children, anyone who tries to shame you for that, screw them.
Yeah.
And sorry, Mark, I'm just going to have to keep FedExing you Tupperware full of my leftovers.
Sounds like a plan, Stan. Matt McCracken of the Gospel Coalition. Joker is the perfect boogeyman for our age, embodying the toxic, corrosive power of an entertainment-obsessed, hyper-mediated society of spectacle.
Wrong era of American history.
Did he miss the fucking point of this movie entirely?
Okay, let's do two things about this. One, look at the time period it's set. Two, you want to know how old the Joker is, buddy, as a character?
Sorry, I think he may have mixed up his reviews for this in It Chapter 2.
Oof.
Jennifer Heaton of Alternative Lens. Joker is to Martin Scorsese... All right, let me start this again because I feel like Robert needs to stretch and make sure... Robert, I don't know if you've got any kind of physical medical conditions, but have you taken your medicine today? Are you properly stretched? Are you going to be able to handle what I'm about to say?
I'm healthy as a horse, baby. Hit me.
Okay, here we go. Brace for impact, buddy. Joker is to Martin Scorsese what Battleship was to Michael Bay. An empty attempt at imitation that confuses aesthetics and homage with quality and flattery.
Okay.
I'm getting in the foxhole.
I just pictured Alexis diving into like a black hole in time space and doing the zipper.
She grabbed Eddie and was oh, okay. On what how on God's green earth under God's hot sun are you even putting Michael Bay in even this loose of a comparative sense to Martin Scorsese? And I'm not the biggest Scorsese fan in the world, okay? Full disclosure. But, man, the notion that Battleship was a hollow representation of Michael Bay's aesthetic. Michael Bay's aesthetic is hollow representationalism. That's all he does. Oh my! If that's the point you want to make, in all seriousness, if you want to say, okay, this movie is a loose inspiration to be charitable or a knockoff if you're not. I don't know why in the world you would go, hey, you know what? That Battleship movie sure was just a terrible representation of all those beloved Michael Bay classic films.
You know,
Get out of here.
You know I'm your friend because I warned you that was coming, and it's not going to get any better with this one. So take a deep breath.
Can I come out of hiding now?
No.
Yeah,
No. Because I know what's coming. David Mad Dog Bradley of Adelaide Review.
Okay,
Which
stop. Just stop.
this is the fucking reviewer equivalent of Jim Cornette yelling at Excalibur to take off his fucking mask.
Okay,
Did he
Jim
actually
Cornette,
call
shut up.
himself Mad Dog?
Yeah.
Yes.
David Mad Dog Bradley.
That is in his byline for some reason.
'Cause he's
Okay,
a
just
twat.
stop right there. Just stop right there. A, you should never give yourself a nickname, buddy. It's just a douchebag things to do. Nicknames are given to you by the people around you who care about you, and that's how it comes about. You don't sit around and go, you know what? Call me Mad Dog. No.
I didn't even name myself the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. That was a joke that started with my friend John. That's how he would introduce me.
That's how it's supposed to go. You didn't call yourself the patriarch of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. I started that.
Yeah, you and Jesse.
No, I was gonna say, trust me, if we could pick our own nicknames, I would not be Squirrel. No, seriously, that's what my dad used to call me when I was little and very hyper. And Andre found out about that shortly after we started dating, and I am just forever Squirrel.
Ah, good husband.
Does he at least call you it in Romanian?
No, but interestingly enough, we got into an argument the other day, and I actually said, "What's Romanian for you don't understand or you're not listening?" And he tried to tell me, and I apparently massacred the language so badly that that he started laughing too hard, and we forgot what we were fighting about.
Excellent. No matter how much Phillips, Phoenix, and the DC Warner Brothers corporate brain trust want it to be some profound examination of masculine malaise, this too is just a comic book movie. Oh,
No,
he's so mad he had to go see this.
Yeah. Boy, I sure do wish I could have seen a non-comic book character explore elements of man's disenfranchisement and the end result of being the victim of too much violence with not enough social network and social fabric to kind of catch me when I fall. I sure do. You could show this guy falling down and he'd go, brilliant. Because it's not related to it's not loosely related to a different property that I hold in disdain. Mad Dog.
I don't even get the point. Masculine malaise. What is he saying that if Domino had more screen time or something, then the film would have been better?
No,
I don't get it.
He's focusing on. This is another person that's kind of looking missing the point, but like looking at sort of male complaints and grievances with the state of societal culture and ascribing it a dismissive term. You know, he's saying, so like by saying like masculine malaise, he's completely ignoring the fact that this is an indictment of like the state of mental health in this country and the disenfranchised, and just saying, no, this is just whiny male Caucasian man babies crying that they're not getting all the attention.
You know, I'm just going to say, again, we spent way too much time discussing the psychoanalytic ramifications of this film. We really did. But at the end of the day, can we all just sit back and say, it's a movie?
Boy, that'd be nice.
It's a freaking movie, okay? And regardless of how you feel about society and how it looks down upon those who have problems and are probably, not getting the treatment or what they truly need, in the end of it, it was 2 hours in a theater with a Coke Zero and a bucket of popcorn.
I had a hot dog.
And it was a good 2 hours. But that's all it was.
I don't buy concessions. I'm cheap.
Vincent Schilling of Indian Country Today. I enjoyed the dark twist of Joker, mirrored by the twisting of Phoenix's body. But even with a masterful performance by Phoenix, I struggled with yet another attack on the origin of the comic book villain I grew up with. I'm really resisting the urge of picking up my monitor and smashing it over my head because it would be less painful.
Okay, again, That was the argument I had when I first heard this movie was coming out. Because, like I said, I don't like when people try to actually personify the origin of the Joker. But if you sit through the film, you realize that's not what this was.
Yeah, this is really not at all an attempt to give you, well, this is why the Joker's the way he is. It's just a snapshot of this character as he's breaking. He is not explained so much as observed. And that's not at all the same thing.
And again, we don't even know if this is the Joker. His face isn't bleached. His smile isn't cut into his face.
I mentioned this on the Source Material podcast. We covered the Dark Side War about a year or so ago, and there's this bit in the Dark Side War where Batman sits on the throne of information, the magic throne that tells him all he needs to know. And so first he says, who killed my parents? And it tells him it was Joe Chill. And then he says, okay, now that we know that the chair works and it'll tell you anything you want to know, then he says, who really is the Joker? And the chair says, well, there's been 3 of them. So again,
I'm not gonna lie, I was hoping that they came up with a 404 error.
And blue screen.
This is just the chair goes into a beach ball. It's
again, and all of that is to say nothing of the fact that there's a very valid interpretation of this movie where the entire thing is just a fantasy he spun up in his head to amuse himself while he's sitting in Arkham.
Kevin Fallon of the Daily Beast. It's the same old song over and over again. A cultural record scratch. Wicka wicka wah, send in the clowns.
You really couldn't resist, could you?
No, okay. I threw in the record scratch sound. He put "Send in the Clowns" at the end.
The number of people who don't even know what "Send in the Clowns" represents to that opera. Oh god, that's painful.
I hate to admit it. It wasn't until I sat through the whole credits of that film I didn't even know who wrote "Send in the Clowns." I confess, I had no idea because the first time I heard it was a parody on Space Ghost Coast to Coast with, oh God, what was the name of the evil mantis?
I can't remember, but I remember the sound of his voice.
Yeah, he sang a song called "Don't Send in the Clowns."
A few more of these and we'll call it a night. Chris Gore, Film Threat. The most radical film to come from a major studio since Fight Club.
Oh, shut up. It is not.
Wow. Fucking memories of fish with these people.
Demonstrably untrue. This loosely reminded me of this other movie. It must be the only one since that, you jackass.
Zorak! That was it. It was Zorak.
That's it. Sounds like thorax.
Brandy McDonald of The Oklahoman. Joker is overly long, thematically murky, and narratively uneven, and with an unnecessary ending that, like a bad grease paint job, ruthlessly highlights the film's flaws rather than concealing them.
Yeah, again, we mentioned the ending be a little over long. I don't think that means it shines a spotlight on some of the issues the movie has.
Even if it was a little overly long, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
If parts of it had been cut out, I don't think anything would have been totally lost. But the way it was, I didn't think there was an issue.
This one's fun. Matt Miller of Esquire magazine. It is a deeply unpleasant movie. You'll walk away depressed, wondering if there's any good left in the world.
Wow. I've got a Michael... look, buddy, I have a movie for you coming out in a few weeks. That will just make everything feel so much better. It's nice, it's bright, it's shiny, things go boom, good guys win, bad guys lose.
Charlie's Angels?
No.
All right.
No, there's nothing good about that movie. That movie is going to destroy the will of people to live.
And yet you still have to review it.
Nope. No, he won. I took it off the schedule.
Yeah.
Oh,
I would not have seen it anyway.
I still have to take my daughter to go see it, though, because she's dying to see this thing.
That might constitute child abuse.
Shut up. Michael Lee of Film Ireland magazine. Ultimately, Joker is near Shakespearean in its tragic scope. It's Macbeth for the comic book movie generation, and easily the most morally complex comic book film since The Dark Knight.
Wrong, and before I forget, wrong.
Yeah, can we talk for... If you want to bring up Macbeth, you moron, can we talk... Like, that is such an inept comparison. Macbeth is a tragedy because a character falls not from a position of damage, but from a position of prominence. Macbeth is, by most accounts, not only a great warrior, but a pretty good guy. And just the temptation of power and longevity and attempting to defy fate leads him to commit atrocities. That is not the story we get here.
I was called Macbeth the story of why you need to quit listening to everyone else.
That's one of those things. I tend to think of it as... Oh, God. What did I say? The Macbeth comparison annoys me because I get so sick of having to correct people who incorrectly implement that quote he says near the end of his life about life being meaningless. And some people take that as a rallying cry, it is a tale told by an idiot signifying nothing. Like, if you don't understand that line comes from a deeply, at this point, unhinged, violent man desperately trying to justify the blood he has shed and the terrible things he's done, I don't know what to tell you. It is not a thesis statement on existence. It is it is a window into the deranged mind of a singular character. That's it.
Ryan Syrek of The Reader, Omaha, Nebraska. Watching an emaciated creeper do several, quote, kooky underpants dances, unquote, is definitely somebody's idea of a good time. It's just not mine, F.
He doesn't dance in his underpants. There's
one scene.
Yeah, I was saying most of the scenes where he's dancing, he's clothed or at least wearing his pants. I mean, there's a couple scenes I know he's dancing shirtless.
There is one scene, I think, when he's literally in his underwear, but that's it.
I can't remember. I know there was one scene, but I can't remember if he was dancing in that or not.
This is how I dance when I'm not wearing any pants, and I'm not going to wear no pants.
Yeah, again, if all you took from this is, this man danced, there was dancing, and some of it was with him partially clothed, I do not know what I can say to help you, sir, find another job.
Yeah, it's like, do they think this is the only film that's ever had a mentally unhinged, sinewy person dancing in tighty whities?
Yeah, that is really... Again, the movie's derivative. It includes that whole bit.
Yeah, that's actually starting to become a trope in film and TV. It's like when you really want to show that somebody's just lost it and make your viewers uncomfortable, you have them dance in the Walter Whiteys.
I mean, look, none of them have had the balls to do the... What is it? The Buffalo Bill dance. And so the closest thing I can get to it is here, underwear.
You didn't sit through Clerks 2.
I didn't sit through Clerks 1.
Speaking of underpants, Kristen Lopez of Culturist.
Oh, shit.
Joker is a self-serious movie that, in spite of its lead, posits itself as revolutionary when it never hovers above bland and tasteless.
Okay,
Wait,
this is not...
Hang on. Lisa Johnson Mandel of AtHomeInHollywood.com. One of the most gratuitously grim films of the decade. You can't help but wonder, for whom the film rolls. Time marches on.
Oh, God. Look, A, how dare you associate Metallica with that Drek?
I will.
How dare you?
B, I now need a drink.
Oh, God. That is so stupid. That is such a profoundly bad take. This is not the most depressing movie of the decade. I'm not entirely sure this is the most depressing movie this year, though for different reasons. Okay, this might be the most deliberately depressing movie this year. I might give you that one. I am not going to go through the list of movies this year. I'm not going to do it. But if we want to talk decade, I can give you a few other grim, depressing movies that off the top of my head I can remember.
When did The Master come out?
It was before, Philip Seymour Hoffman, before he died. 2012.
There you go.
So there's The Master, also starring Joaquin Phoenix. There's... just talking like raw depression, like deliberately depressing movies.
If you want something that just, is absolutely horrible depression, go see 7 Pounds.
Sure, that's a good one. I could reference The Prodigy, but none of you saw it. That's a pretty depressing movie.
Here, I got one for you. Chris Knight, National Post. This is a fascinating movie, but I wouldn't call it fun.
I want to throw something at this guy. Hang on. Anyone who knows this person, I want you to find something of substance but not harmful, and I want you to throw it at them. Like, if you got a water balloon filled with, like, cottage cheese, chuck it at this guy.
All right, two
How
more.
do you fill up a water balloon with cottage cheese?
Carefully. 2 more, and then we're done.
It's not as hard as you think.
Robert Horton of HeraldNet in Everett, Washington. A sour, incoherent jumble redeemed only by Joaquin Phoenix's astonishing performance in the central role.
This is not an incoherent jumble. It's really not. It's not the... Again, is this screenplay going to be studied by screenwriters?
Probably.
No.
Pretentious screenwriters, yes.
The type of screenwriters who don't want to actually talk, like...
The question is, should it be studied? And the answer is no.
Yeah, like, again, the ones who are going to be like, well, I could study a documentedly good and great screenplay, or I can take this one that kind of butts up against it and its end product was great, and then just pretend like, oh, my dark horse in the heavyweight division is Sergei Karatanov. Get out of here.
All right. Last one. Kurt Loder needs to just stop reviewing fucking movies. I'm not saying he shouldn't work. We should all have a purpose-driven life. And I wish no ill will on Kurt Loder, but I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to please, if anyone knows who he is, tell him go do something else. I'm not even saying don't work for the rag you work for, but just stop reviewing movies.
If you heard correctly, even Eddie was protesting that one.
Kurt Loder of Reason Online, formerly of MTV News, you heard it here first. The movie gets off to a strangely muted start, and even fans of the DC comics, in which the demented clown has been giving Batman so much guff for the past 80 years, may grow restless. I'm sorry you had to see this movie that pained you so much, Mr. Loder. Could you please find something else to do for a living?
You are inflicting so much... You, sir, Mr. Loder, have inflicted more misery on me in the last 48 hours than this movie did.
Why is Kurt Loder still doing anything? He is a freaking relic of the 90s.
He was a dated relic in the 90s. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. I did watch MTV at one point or another in my life. I did watch a little Kurt Loder, and I'm sitting here going, he's still alive?
Yes, and doing terrible movie reviews for movies he does not want to go see.
Ugh. Just stop this, sir. Look, I'm sure people who care about you will put you into a good home, and you can stop doing this.
How old do you think he is?
I don't care.
I'm pretty sure him and Gandalf went to the same wizard school.
Look,
my dog, I'm lying on the couch and the dog just jumped on my hair. Sorry.
Look, Kurt Loder studied under the learning tree of freaking... Why am I blanking on his name now? Leonard Maltin. Back in the day. And they both need to go... They both need to go away.
Old man sleepy. All right. That wraps up our review of Joker. Tomorrow, something a little less serious. The best album of this year. I recommend you all listen to it. These people are just wordsmiths. They are the height of musicianship. They are the zenith of modern music. Ladies and gentlemen, Heavy Metal Rules by Steel Panther. Please check out our Metal Hammer of Doom extra for the hit single, All I Want to Do Is Fuck Myself, in parentheses, Tonight. Fantastic.
I do not know how you make the decisions you make.
I assumed that was the title of Kurt Loder's autobiography.
All I Want to Do Is Fuck Myself Tonight? Yeah, probably.
It will be Jim Acosta's second book.
It's a catchy song. You should listen to it. Anyway, Thursday, we will be reviewing Pennyworth. Saturday, because God fucking hates me, Tyrone Spong will no longer be fighting Alexander Usyk. It'll be some other jabroni.
Failed a drug test.
I'm so depressed. What else?
Welcome to my life following combat sports.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. And there's nothing else good that night anyway. I mean, there's your girlfriend who's fighting in Tampa, but
I do not have a girlfriend, but okay.
And Joanna Champion.
Joanne, no, she is not a champion and hasn't been for some time.
Joanna not a champion. So yeah, Alexander Usyk will be fighting some jabroni. Myself and Victor Cacado from the All About Life podcast will be doing commentary on it because, god damn it, I'm not giving this up. Even though Tyrone Spong dropped out of this fight, and that was the whole reason I was watching it. God damn my life.
Hey, hang on. Look, Usyk will murder somebody. That'll be watchable.
It will be watchable. And then next week, it's October. We usually dedicate an entire week to something, even loosely within the horror genre. This year, we decided to dedicate an entire week to all things John Constantine. There were 107 people on this source material that'll be coming out Monday, October 14th. John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dangerous Habits. All 107 of us talked about that book. It was fantastic. On Tuesday, myself and Jesse Starcher will do a TV party for the one and only season of Constantine on NBC, now airing on CW Seed and DC Universe. The Metal Hammer of Doom will be reviewing Baby Metal, Metal Galaxy, and then Sean Comer and I will do an on-trial for the Keanu Reeves Constantine movie that was loosely based on the Dangerous Habits arc in the Hellblazer comic.
Boy, loosely is accurate.
And then that's it. Nothing on Friday, nothing on Saturday. Also, we will be doing a review. Myself, Chris Sheehan, and Chris Bailey will all be doing a review of Hell in the Cell. And we'll tell you why that main event was so bad it should be studied.
Boy, that was awful.
Yeah.
I mean, the truly sad thing is there's a kernel of a good idea there. Like, I understand what they were going for on a conceptual level, but man, was that just not good.
It was that's like saying, though, like, I understand what you were going for on a conceptual level when you made that soup, but you probably shouldn't have dropped it on the guy's pants.
Yeah, look, that doesn't mean the soup was inherently terrible. It means it ended up in the wrong place.
Yeah, it did. And speaking of soup ending up in someone's crotch, Alexis, please plug your business.
What?
Look, whatever we end up talking about, Mark will make a bad segue like that. I'm sorry.
I would say it wasn't soup in the crotch; it was corgi on the head.
Same thing.
No, they're not.
Oh my God, go!
Yes, Honeysuckle Rose Creations. We will be making an appearance this coming weekend at the Kansas City Zombie Walk for Hunger. We'll be donating some of our horror-themed items to their charity raffle. This is an event we do every year. Always looking forward to it, especially since it is finally cooling down here in Kansas City. And I am looking forward to actually getting out and enjoying some weather where I don't melt. Next weekend, we are going to be heading to Cape Girardeau for our first time at Cape Fear. This is a horror convention, and I'm sorry, how much more perfect of a name can you get than that? I freaking love it. After that, we got a week off, and then back-to-back shows. I am going to be on the road, heading to Anime Week in Atlanta, and then doing the world's biggest U-turn and heading up to Grand Rapids Comic-Con after that. I'm doing all this by myself. Pray for me when I start driving through Kentucky. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you got our shops on Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
When are you back on the Radulich and Broadcasting? I know you're done with other shows for this month, but are you on Fear Itself or Blackest Night?
I'll double check for Fear Itself. Other than that, I know you guys don't really have me on for much of this month, although Mark, you and I have been talking about doing some Patreon exclusive commentaries for this month. So we'll see if we can schedule those in. Take a look at something like that.
In November, we have Terminator, The Burning Earth, Stephen King's N, something from the Teen Titans, The Boys Volume 1, and I know for sure we're doing She-Ra Season 4, but that's all the comic book stuff we're doing.
Well, I know you got me on for Dr. Sleep, of course.
Yes, and Dr. Sleep, forgot about that one. And you have zero interest in Terminator, right?
On the fence, actually.
You're on the fence.
I'm not totally dissuaded against it. It looks a shit ton better than Genesis was.
Well,
Boy,
sure.
That was so bad.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
so-
God.
Yeah, Andre and I rented that, and it was just like, so it's a cloud. Skynet is a cloud.
All right, Robert, do your thing.
All right, this last Saturday I had live coverage of UFC 243, which was about what you expected. I think if you looked at it on paper, a genuinely great main event that lasted about 8 minutes. Israel Adesanya becomes the undisputed middleweight champion, remains undefeated, knocks out Robert Whittaker in the second round. Some really, really great stuff for as long as it lasted. I imagine those two will be fighting again at some point in the future, and I look forward to it. On Sundays, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, which you can find on Apple Music, Google Plus, Stitcher, YouTube if you're so inclined, or just the 411mania.com website. I looked at our Apple Music thing, and apparently we have a few star ratings and a couple of reviews, so thank you.
Oh, yours does?
Yeah.
Good for you.
We have not a lot, like 4 or 5 reviews and 2 written, 4 or 5 ratings and 2 written reviews. But one of the guys who wrote a review said, these two have a good rapport going on, and when the host has to go by himself, he's still pretty engaged. Like, you are lying, but thank you. So anyway, you can find us all there. You can find the Radulich and Broadcasting Network on all those places. Please interact with the product a little bit. Give us a Give us a rating.
Give us a 1-star review, please. That's all we deserve.
If you think we're a 1-star show, give us 1 star. If you think we're a 5-star show, you need better standards. But give us a star rating. Write us a review if you're so inclined. If you're on YouTube, come on. This is thumbs up material rather than thumbs down. Give us a thumbs up. Write a comment. I mean, look, constructive criticism is always welcome. If all you want to do is tell us to eat shit, we can't stop you, but that's not helpful. So you can find me there it's not next week, it's the week after. We're doing Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. And I will want to die.
And then we'll follow that up with Zombieland. Wham, bam, Zombieland 2. Double tap.
Yeah, on that one too.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Look, how can we not just cram more people in to talk about any movie headlined by 3 Oscar nominees and 1 winner? Can I just say that the promotional material for that movie that's like, hey, Academy Award nominee Woody Harrelson, Academy Award winner Emma Stone, Academy Award nominee Jesse Eisenberg, like, it just then cuts to them killing zombies in a field. It's so great.
All right, folks. This has been Damn You Hollywood here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. For Alexis Hejna of Honeysuckle Rose Creations, for Robert Winfree of the 401mania.com. I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and
Smile.
Put on a happy face.
Terrific. And behave.